I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified Board of Education to order. The meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording may capture sounds and images of those attending this meeting. The recording will be posted on the district's website. Board meetings are being held in person in the boardroom at the district office, and the community is welcome to attend. The meeting may also be viewed on the district's YouTube channel, where it is being live streamed. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Zima Creason, Board President. To my left is Ms. Pam Costa, Board Vice President. To her left soon will be Mr. Steve Miller, who's running a little late, and he is the Board Clerk. To his left is Mr. Ben Avey, Ms. Paula Viesquez, soon Ms. Tanya Krevchek, who is also running a bit late, and Mr. Saul Hernandez, Board members. To my right is Superintendent Melissa Bassinelli, and to her right is Board Administrative Assistant Stephanie Cunningham. Individuals who are attending the meeting in person and would like to offer public comment, we ask that you complete a speaker request card available at the staff table, and you will be called on at the appropriate time during the agenda. This afternoon, we will begin with a workshop about the Brown Act and board governance. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassinelli, and Ms. Cunningham. This afternoon, we have a robust presentation for you on the Brown Act and its implications for you as board members. We'll follow that up with a discussion continuing our conversation around the board governance handbook, which we will not ask for any action today. And it's just a follow-up conversation so that we can then bring you some changes to language at a subsequent meeting. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Bill Schutz, who will lead us through the content on the Brown Act.
All right, see my live, here we go. Hello. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, President Creason and trustees. Nice to meet you. My name is Bill Schutz. I'm an attorney with Dan Swallover Kelly, based out of our Sacramento office. I've been working with school boards for, a couple decades now on different various issues, including governance in the Brown Act. I myself was also a elected board member for over 6 years and served as president during a couple of those years. So I've sat in your shoes on the other side of the dais too. So I've experienced some of these issues with the Brown Act, in person as well. So I have control here. So let's see. So today we're going to do a whirlwind workshop on the Brown Act overview. I know we have some of you are new to the board. Whether you're new or you've been on the board for a while, I think all this is relevant. It's always great to have refreshers on some of these areas. And we're going to talk about a couple newer areas too that you may not be quite as familiar with. All right. I always like to start off these sessions and talking about the intent of the Brown Act. It's written right here. The people of the state yield to the sovereignty of the agencies which they serve. But in delegating that authority, they want to keep informed about what is happening, remain informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. So as elected officials, you're representatives of the people who elected you, and they want to remain informed. And the Brown Act is a way to help facilitate that. So a couple of the main tenets, intent of the Brown Act is to keep the public informed of the actions, debates, and views of locally elected representatives, and to provide the procedural framework for local legislators to meet, debate, and act and listen collectively to their constituents. So it has a twofold process. It's allowing access and informed of stakeholders, but also allowing you to do the business that you need to do as a board. Also codified in the California Constitution are some of these same thoughts as the Brown Act, the right to access, and that right of access shall be broadly construed if it furthers people's right of access, and has to be narrowly construed to the extent you limit that. So we're going to talk about a little bit about, well, what does it mean for public participation in meetings? And you implement rules, those type of things in order to get your business done. So board, you all know this, the board members act as a collective, not as individuals. So we'll talk about later, takes a majority action to pass a motion, take an action of the board. And no authority is granted to any one board member individually. And Some other areas outside of the Brown Act, but also kind of really mirrors a lot of the obligations on the Brown Act are your board bylaws. And I just took a few of them for your reference. They're great things to peruse, when you have time. 9,000 talks about the role of the board. 910 talks about public statements. Some things about all statements, keeping in mind that the board acts as a majority, not as individuals. The public statements bylaw references all public statements in the name of the governing board shall be issued through the president, or if appropriate by a superintendent or their designee. Now, that doesn't mean you can't say things individually as a board member in public, but it's important to realize that what you say outside a board meeting can be perceived as something said on behalf of the entire board. So when you're expressing one of your personal views, as in this bylaw recognizes, the board encouraged its spokesperson to supposed to exercise and restrain and indicate that what I'm saying is my own personal belief and not necessarily on behalf of the whole board. We also have a couple other bylaws, governance standards, and 9,200 about limits on the board member authority. A lot of these are great because they help remind you of your role as a board member. If you're a parent, thinking what that means when you're going out to a school site as a parent versus as a board member, and making sure that those lines aren't blurred, and requesting information, things like that. A lot of this is kind of carried over to the handbook, which we're going to talk about later. The handbook really mirrors a lot of what's said in the bylaw and probably an easier reference tool. But that's another set of rules that you as a board have agreed or maybe agreeing to follow along with the bylaws, in addition to following the Brown Act. So just quickly on committees. I'm not sure if you have any standing committees of the board, but that would be a committee that's created by a resolution or a formal action of the board. Those standing committees, you have to follow the Brown Act for those meetings. Now, at what's also referred to as an ad hoc committee, which is a committee that's has a limited duration or has a specific purpose with an ending date. For instance, maybe it's one I've seen before, a superintendent search committee. It had a limited duration where it was going to end once we, got to candidates for hiring that superintendent. Those you don't have to follow the Brown Act. Generally, we'll talk about a caveat there in a second. Also, committees created by staff are not subject to the Brown Act unless they include a quorum of board members. So quorum is a majority of your board. You're a 7-member board, so majority in your case would be 4. So if you add 4 on that, then it would be subject to the Brown Act. So what is a meeting? The old rule used to be that it had to be a collective. You couldn't have a meeting unless you had a collective concurrence on an action to be taken by the board. But that's not the standard anymore. You don't it's not a collective concurrence of the majority of the board. It's any congregation of a majority of the members of the board at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any item within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. So it's broader. And I think one of the intents was there to favor open, public actions of the board and transparency. So they kind of tighten the reins there. So it's not as strict as it used to be as far as what would create a meeting. So the reality is it's easier to create a meeting, easier to violate the Brown Act inadvertently. So you don't need to take any action in order for there to be a meeting under the Brown Act, which is always an important thing to remember. But what is not a meeting? Now, the meeting in the Brown Act excludes, there's some examples: appearance of a board majority at a general conference open to the public. Maybe some of you went to the California School Board Association conference. Majority of the board going there would not itself create a meeting for purpose of the Brown Act, but you have to be careful because you do have a majority there, and you're learning a lot of things, and there's that tendency to want to talk about those things that are relevant to you and your district. You gotta be careful we don't slip into that. What becomes a meeting by talking, discussing, deliberating on something that's within your jurisdiction. Also, you may be attending a ceremonial occasion. Maybe it's a graduation or an 8th grade promotion. That itself would not be creating a meeting. But we always have to be aware that it could become a meeting to the extent you start talking. Well, I'll emphasize that in a second. Some other examples of when a meeting would not be created. Maybe it's a county event that's presenting on something going on in the community or a city event, and a majority of the board's attending that as for informational purposes. Wouldn't create a Brown Act, but it's important to not have those conversations about something within your jurisdiction. And I think optically, when I was a board member and I was going to meetings like that, I would try and actually not sit with other board members just to avoid that appearance that we could be talking about it, even though we weren't. So that's just always a good thing to keep in mind. So this is the reminder to take away from that is, well, for that exclusion to apply and for it not to be a meeting, members must not discuss topics within the subject matter of the district other than as part of, say, that scheduled program. And for attendance at a standing committee meeting, as long as you have the three on there, right? Others can attend, provided they're there just to observe. But to the extent others start engaging in the meeting, the subject matter of it, it could convert it into a meeting for purposes of the Brown Act, and then you'd be violating. So I think you all know this. Obviously, your meetings have to be open to the public. And has to be accessible to public. You can't charge people to get in here and attend your board meetings. Have to be within your boundaries with limited exceptions. These are very limited, and if you have something come up like that, we'll talk to Linda or other legal counsel on what we can do there. While I'm talking about meeting locations, I wanted to digress a second and just talk about remote meetings and what options are still available and a new option that may be available depending on the circumstances. So remote meetings, you recall during the pandemic, we were able to have remote meetings. You could call in, participate by Zoom, and it was very easy. You could call in from your car. Those have been in the past. And prior to AB 361, the governor's executive order gave a lot of flexibility to school boards, understanding that we needed to continue the business of the board, but there were some challenges to meeting in person. Now that things are getting more back to normal, the legislature has as well. And so we're getting back more to what are the traditional requirements for meeting. But we'll talk about AB 2449. With that, the legislature recognized there may be some circumstances still where an individual board meeting needs to participate in a meeting remote. So we'll talk about when those exist. With AB 361, we'll also say that one's going away pretty soon, at least for now, because the governor's emergency order will be lifting. So let's go back to the one that you've had even pre-COVID, is our traditional teleconference requirements. For any of you who have participated, called into a board meeting, these are all the obligations that apply. I think some of the ones I want to highlight is that the agenda shall identify each of those meeting locations. So back when we were back in remote Zoom meetings, you didn't have to identify your house address, if that's where you were Zooming in from. But now under traditional teleconference requirements, you would have to identify the address where you are calling in from and make it open to the public and post an agenda outside that location 72 hours before, if it's a regular board meeting, 24 hours before. I think one of the examples I've heard before and actually talked to a client about is they were on vacation and wanted to call into a meeting, and they were going to call in from the beach, right? From the lounge chair on the beach. It was open to the public. So what do you do about posting the agenda? I think they were posting it on the palm tree, but you had to think about it, you had to do that 72 hours before. So we'll see as you can imagine, some logistical challenges to doing that. So on the requirement about it being open to the public, you can't call in from your car, can't call in from a hospital room. Think about other places where the public could not access that, that would not work. So these are the requirements that have been in play for traditional teleconference requirements and still are. AB 361, applying to remote meetings of the board during a state of emergency. You may have utilized this at some point over the past, whatever, a year after this has been in existence. It does not sunset as a law until January 1st, 2024, but its use is dependent on whether there's a existence of a state of emergency. And right now, the state of emergency is counted to lift on February 28th. So we have a limited time we can use this unless we're going to say, how are we to say we can never use this again so we don't have another state of emergency come up around. But it's for a limited duration, and this allowed the board as a whole to meet remotely, provided certain restrictions and obligations were met. So AB 2449 is potentially a new option for you. It's effective. It was effective January 1st. Some of its advantages are remote participation without traditional requirements. Some of those traditional telephonic conference meeting requirements about posting agenda accessible to the public from your location wouldn't apply. I want to be clear that this doesn't apply to the whole board. It's for individual board members, and it can't be any more than a minority of the board. So it's very limited in scope. And there are some restrictions that it can be really challenging in order to implement it. So how much of it, whether it can be an option that actually is viable or useful in the future, it can be challenging. So just some requirements here. Meeting requirements require a quorum, be present within the jurisdiction of the board at an open location. So the majority would be here, for example. Well, you have to give public access via two-way audio visual platform or two-way audio service webcast. So it's public access electronically, even though you have in person as well. And public comment has to be provided via a remote platform as well as in person. So what I think one of the biggest challenges to implementation of this is whether you have the technology set up in order to take that public comment and have that access two-way. And that's just for the meeting requirements. Now you also have member requirements. They also have to participate through video and audio. And while their location doesn't necessarily have to be open to the public, they have to identify everyone in the room who's 18 or older as part of that obligation. So I'm an individual board member, and I have an interest. I want to meet remotely under this exception. That can happen under two circumstances, whether they're just cause or there's an emergency circumstance. Just cause is defined here to caring for family member, illness, and then you have to provide notice to the board of that just cause. Now, you don't need to disclose specifics about, sensitive medical information about why, but it has to be disclosed. Under the emergency circumstance, this one is even more tricky because it requires not only notice to the board, but the board actually has to approve it. Now that could be done on an emergency basis at that meeting if there wasn't enough time in advance of that meeting to give you notice and in order to have it agendized appropriately. So it would fall under the emergency exemption for items not on the agenda. But the board would be provided with a general description of the emergency circumstances and need board approval there. So as you can see, there's a lot of logistics to that one that could be challenging. And remember, it's not for the whole board, it's for really individual members based on specific just cause or emergency situation. Oops, I'm not gonna go, how do I go back? I'm not gonna go through this, but I think it's a helpful reference tool. What are the rules when under each of these options and when they apply? And it tells you when they're going into effect and when not. And so this is a handy reference tool for you, but if something like this comes up in the future, you are, definitely talking with administration and council about how to making sure we're doing following all the rules here. So just a quick slide on some permitted communications that are definitely okay. Communications limited providing information or answers to questions. And these are things that don't necessarily trigger a meeting for purposes of the Brown Act. Provided, we're providing information, we're passing things along, but we're finding we're not passing on comments or the position of another board member. Because that's when we can, get into that discussion piece on something that's within your jurisdiction. So communications limited providing information or something about procedural or administrative matters, maybe polling the board about calendar in a special board meeting. Those type of things don't constitute meetings for purposes of the Brown Act. I want to spend a couple minutes here is talking about serial meetings. So not cereal like you have for breakfast, but it's basically the name comes from what's used in the Brown Act. The majority of the members shall not outside a notice meeting use a series of communications of any kind directly or through intermediaries to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business that's within the board's jurisdiction. Some examples were, telephone, email, facsimile. I don't think anyone's doing that these days. Internet, we'll talk about how that comes up in social media and how that can be an easy place to have a serial meeting inadvertently. And then also through intermediaries, maybe, I'm talking to an individual in the public and that member of the public is passing on something to another board member and so on and so on. And then all of a sudden you have a majority discussing on something that's within your jurisdiction. These are the classic examples of what could create a serial meeting. First one's kind of like that phone game, we all played as kids, but you're passing on, A calls B and then B calls C and passes it on. And in this case, this was based really a 5-member board. It would, we need a majority here. But you get the idea, right? That's the phone tree. The hub and spoke is when A is saying B, A is saying C, and C and D, and then all of a sudden you're having a discussion. Oops, went back again. All of a sudden you're having a series of communication to discuss or deliberate something within jurisdiction of the board. So how does this kind of serial meetings come up in social media contexts? I as a board member didn't utilize social media, but I understand and I think the legislature realized that it's a way for elected officials to communicate with constituents and stay informed. So what is it allowed? Answering questions, providing information, soliciting information from the public. That's that intent, the back and forth. So you are hearing from your stakeholders and being able to inform them. But some limitations is being an open and accessible to the public and no discussion or responses between board members. And that's where it can get tricky. So under the rules, and this was kind of the legislature's catching up with technology a little bit, because the Brown Act has been around a long time, but when we're talking about facsimile and blogs and things like that, social media is the prevalent way of communicating in a lot of ways. So some of the areas that are prohibited as far as social media are, as a board member shall not respond directly to any communication regarding a matter that's within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the board that is made, posted, or shared by any board member. So we'll see how that plays out. And then a majority may not use social media to discuss amongst themselves business of a specific nature that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So what does discuss amongst themselves mean? It's defined in the Brown Act. Means that communications made, posted, or shared on an internet-based social media platform between members of the board, including comments or use of icons that express reactions to communications. So thinking about that, it may be that communication or discussion may not only be in words or posts, but in a emoji or maybe even a like. And the legislature even recognized digital icons that express reactions to communications made by other members. So yeah, keeping that in mind. So some takeaways here is you can use internet-based social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're using, to engage in separate conversations or communications, to answer questions to the public, to provide information to the public, and solicit information from the public. You can use social media. Well, I've heard, well, what do I have I'm very active on Facebook on my personal account. Well, it doesn't prevent you from doing that. But when you start getting into discussions about posting about matters within the jurisdiction of the board, you got to be careful because it could inadvertently turn your personal Facebook page into a forum that would allow not only engaging discussion from stakeholders, but potentially a serial meeting if other board members are commenting there. So one thing, what can be dangerous is the posting or commenting or liking on a comment made by another board member on a social media website, like Facebook, for instance. That one comment or like, if it's within your jurisdiction of your board, could itself be a violation of the Brown Act here, even though it wasn't a majority of the board having discussion. So it's what I think is a good rule of thumb, and it can be challenging, is if it's, say, for instance, Facebook, look and see who commented before you comment. I know that can be really challenging if there's a lot of posts, but that's the safest way, or avoid comments or other posts. I know that's not a solution for some board members. I understand that, but it's to exercise caution and be careful. So these are a few slides on agenda requirements and what needs to be on there. You know about posting and what notice has to be provided. Some items we have on the agenda, including what type of meeting it is. A brief agenda has to include a brief general description. It's enough to inform the public of what's going to be discussed on that item so they can know, hey, I want to come and comment on that or hear what has to be said. And then under closed session, we have certain descriptions that the Brown Act says, if you use that, you're good for purposes of the description under the Brown Act, and we follow those. One thing I'll just mention here, you know, you certain things that the agenda that a meeting would include. It always has to include a section on public comment on non-agenda items. And anytime the board is going to be talking about any action item, there has to be time for the public to comment before or during action on that item, which we'll talk about in a second. So briefly on non-agenda items, these are something comes up or maybe by someone in the public, or it's something that that an individual board member has interest in talking about that's not on the agenda. Not only the Brown Act, but your bylaw 9323 specifies no action or discussion shall be undertaken on any item not appearing on a posted agenda. So no discussion. What it does allow is without taking action, board members or district staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posted or posed by the public about items not appearing on the agenda. And ask a question for clarification. But what I want to caution here is not inadvertently starting into a discussion or a dialogue, because once you ask one question, maybe another board member has another question about the same item, and then all of a sudden we're turning into a discussion on that non-agenda item. I think it's important for the board president to, recognize that, and if there's something that can be directed to administration to answer later without getting into a discussion now. Same with that pitfall or slippery slope about getting into a discussion with members of the public on an item that's not on the agenda. There's always that interest. I want those here to feel heard and that we're hearing them. And there's an easy tendency to engage in back and forth. But that's not what the Brown Act or your bylaw allows. And it's important that not to do that, because once you do it, then it's turning into something else, and then we may have a town hall situation. So these are some of the parameters there. And then of course, during your board reports, you can, talk about things, activities you've done as a board and announce. That's your public comment period of time. So just on, we talk about those public rights. They have the right to comment, on items on the agenda, and non-agenda items. You hear them, what they have to say. But we talked about how you can set parameters for your board meetings. It's not a town hall. It's a limited public forum that allows you to set rules, and you do have rules. You have time, you allow 2 minutes per comment. It's in your bylaws. And you can limit that total time per agenda for your bylaws with some discretion to adjust that depending on the amount of speakers you have. So think about it's a reasonable place and time limitations. And the interest there is if we didn't have any rules, you'd be here all night and not get any business done. So it allows you to balance that right of the public to access and comment with your need to perform business and get through your agenda. And keep in mind that for special board meetings, there's only public comment is limited to items on the agenda. There's no portion for non-agenda items. So this may have been, a factor for you this past year. And just a reminder, the right to public comment at meetings is subject to the business, not only business that needs to be done by the board, but also it does have limits. To the extent, there's limitations that need to be imposed to ensure the proper functioning of the board. That's recognized in your education code. And you can impose these limited content restrictions where we get into threats. So your bylaw itself says the board need not permit disruptive behavior, disruptive comment, excuse me. And you do have a couple tools. How effective they are, depends. But you can work, to the extent these things come up, you have disruption in meetings, you have the ability to clear the room. And we also have a new ground under the Brown Act. I think the legislature recognized had some really disruptive meetings. So it allows you to clear or to remove individuals for disruptive conduct behavior. Problem is it's the implementation of that can be really challenging. So work with your council and administration, when those circumstances arise about some things that can be done. And a lot of it's educating your public, your members who are coming to meeting. These are the rules we expect to follow. This is your time for public comment. And we, appreciate respect and civility, all those things you guys have been Just a reminder, actions and vote has to be by majority of the board. Where that can sometimes get tricky is when you have some maybe members absent or abstentions, which we'll talk about later, where that could be challenging sometimes. Closed session. So the Brown Act, obviously, we're talking about the interest of the Brown Act open to the constituents access. The Brown Act favors public open meetings, right? Transparency, access, but does recognize that there are circumstances when the board needs to and can meet in closed session outside of the public view. And the Brown Act includes several of these situations. There's also an education code, the ability to meet in closed session on student privacy right matters. So some of the topics, common topics you may have seen or actually met in closed session about, including personnel matters, hearing complaints or charges against employees, labor negotiations, real property transactions, anticipated threats to litigation, tort claims of, against the district for money, and student discipline hearings. One thing is the Brown Act does not include a catch-all reason to go into closed session. I know there's some times where you wish you could go into closed session because it's something you would prefer not to talk about in public. Open, maybe it's sensitive or uncomfortable to talk about in open, but that there is no catch-all exception. It has to fall within one of the closed session categories. And these aren't all of them. There are a number more. But when I go through these, I want you to think about the interests served by discussing having this in closed session. I think it's obvious in most instances. So personnel exception, it's governing board may meet in closed session to consider the employment, employment, evaluation, performance, or discipline or dismissal of public employees. Trying to protect the privacy interests of employees, and that's here. Sometimes it also can allow the board to deliberate freely and get information it needs openly and freely, not exposing to liability potentially. A lot of different interests served by meeting in closed here. Employment contracts, this is really limited around superintendents at cabinet level employees. There was a case years ago, a city case, I believe, where there's an interest in having the contracts of our executives heard openly and approved openly in the content so that we weren't doing something we weren't supposed to be doing, right? Complaints and charges is one that I find is often confused by employees or times confused by their employees and representatives. This does not apply when the board is considering or deliberating whether complaints or charges against an employee justifies disciplinary action. It applies when the board is actually hearing complaints or charges by witnesses and evidence. It's like conducting a hearing itself in closed session. In those other instances, there's going to be a due process that's provided after you make your approval or recommendation on something. This is designed to protect that so the employee has the right to have that heard and open if they wanted to exercise that. You think about why do we have labor negotiations in closed session? I mean, clearly, if we had it in open, we'd be giving away all of our. We might as well just give the other side everything they wanted, right? Because they would know our side, they would know our limits. So I think that one's obvious. One thing I noted here is there is an exception under the Education and Employment Relations Act for say it's in between, you've got given directions to your lead negotiator, but there's a need to get feedback from the board or direction from the board on a proposal or something. This allows the lead negotiator to meet with the board without an agendized board meeting in order to basically get direction on that item. But keep in mind, it's only if they're represented employees, and it's always best to get that direction during an agendized meeting rather than this, but it's available there and your lead negotiators and administration knows that. again, I think similar to labor negotiations, you're selling a parcel. If we had negotiations or given direction to our negotiator, how much to sell this parcel for, it's not in the best interest of the district, right? So keeping that discussion in closed session, but realizing that it's limited, and that just talking about general property issues doesn't fall under here. It's when you're giving specific direction to your real property negotiator. Pending anticipated litigation, this could be meeting with your counsel either in person or through a legal opinion or Zoom or through the superintendent, who's been advising administration. Again, there's some liability concerns, if you're talking about pending litigation or existing litigation in open session. And the purpose is to allow discussion in circumstances which discussion in open session would prejudice the position of the district. And I think that almost applies in a lot of these instances where the position of the district will be prejudiced, right? Just briefly on reporting out and legal counsel will be, counsel, then you'll be instructed, how to report out on when it's needed. But it's varying depending on the circumstances, whether it's at that board meeting or at a later date, depends on a lot of factors and which subject matter or reason why you're there in closed session. I could spend 10, 20 slides on that, but you'll get help when that time comes and you'll be advised on what specifically needs to be reported out. Just a quick reminder, you all know this, but what you talk about in closed session is to remain confidential. The Brown Act says you shall not disclose confidential information received in closed session. And there are potential consequences as a result, including, say you disclose something that created liability issue for the district, that's one that's beyond just you personally, it impacts the whole district. And, violations, we're getting violations related to the Brown Act. There are some repercussions there. You have responsibility as a board to police yourself, do your due diligence to ensure that the Brown Act's not violated. But to the extent it is, there are these potential consequences. So those are just some reminders, and you guys are all doing a great job. And thank you for your time. I know that was a lot of whirlwind information. I don't know what our timing is, but if there were any, we're right at 4:45, aren't we? Hit it on the button.
Thank you. That was a lot of information, a lot of great information. Any questions or comments from the board?
There it is.
Mr. Avey.
Is there anything in the Brown Act that just prohibits virtual public comment in general at this point?
So if you look back, best one. So we don't have back when we had Zoom meetings, we had to allow public comment that way. I think there's different ways that it was being done, comment was being done. If we're in this, using one of the exceptions, the new one I talked about, you would have to allow public comment electronically, two-way. But as far as traditional telephonic requirements, if you're doing that, doesn't trigger any remote. And I think most districts, we're back in public, we're taking public comment in public. Of course, you are always accessible by email, and your folks can comment to you that way too.
But I guess there's no prohibition on us adding virtual public comment in addition to in-person public comment.
I don't know if it's prohibited, but not necessarily a good idea either, just because of the repercussions, potentially of doing that. I think there's an interest in having your constituents in person generally. And it only triggers when you have the board member remotely where it triggers that right, or the whole board under 361 where they would. I don't know. I think we could advise separately if what are the negative repercussions, but I think open public meetings is where we are, but I appreciate the question.
Yeah, and then just one other question. This may be just more for staff, is I think I would appreciate a list of what are our Brown Act committees? Like I know the threshold for them, but I don't know which committees that we have for the Brown Act. So for example, our site councils, Brown Act committees, or so it doesn't have to be now, and you can, but.
Just real quick, Mr. Avey, the two committees that would fall under the Brown Act would be our Curriculum and Standards Committee and our Facilities Committee. Most of our other committees are going to fall under the Green Act, which has slightly lesser standards, many of the same requirements, but it does allow for more engagement and conversation between members between meetings in the Green Act versus the Brown Act. But those two would be the only two that are under the Brown Act at this time.
Yeah,
And just a point of clarification before we move on, we have not transferred over or transitioned over to Green Act yet. But we're
So-
moving in that direction, correct?
I believe what Ms. Creason is referring to is with our Community Advisory Committee for CAC. They are, as of January 1, now eligible to go under the Green Act, where they had been under the Brown Act previously. We are actually in the midst of researching because of the way their bylaws are written. We want to make sure we don't violate anything in their bylaws. There's nothing in Ed Code that would prevent them from going under the Green Act at this time. So we're in that process of transitioning them to the Green Act.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's more flexibility there. Same with any ad hoc board committees that are created. More flexibility about meetings. Your Green Act committees often have bylaws that dictate some of that. I think the intent is to have access still.
Other comments, questions from the board? Ms. Krupchak?
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Slide 30, non-agenda items. The second bullet says that without taking action, board members, and district staff can briefly basically address the comment. We read something before we allow public comment that says that we will not respond. Is that, which one is wrong? How do I understand this?
I think this is the board may engage in conversations with members of the public. Bullet, is that your friend? That's
Yes.
referring to like conversations outside of a board meeting and not at. The other slide I had on non-agenda items was talking about could be a situation where you get a comment from the public during a board meeting about an item not on the agenda and not engaging in conversations about that to create a discussion, because the Brown Act prohibits that discussion. But clearly you can talk with members outside public. You're at the grocery store, you're talking with a constituent about something that's within jurisdiction. That's not going to be create a meeting as long as that individual's not becomes an intermediary where they're sharing your views with another, enough board members to make it a majority. Does
Okay.
that kind of answer your question?
I think so. So
Okay.
this bullet is not regarding a meeting.
No, that's
Sorry,
what's-
a
what's
formal board meeting.
No, that's communications outside of a board meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
I think, just to be clear, because it does say no interaction, but let's say someone comes up here and tells us about a great parade that they're gonna do at their school and stuff, and they go on and on, and they're all done. It's like, well, what time and what day? That's permissible. Ask a question like that. But not, what's your policy on parades?
Yeah, no, I think it's.
Or answer a question, because that could get into a discussion.
Or could we get some more information on that, or, can the superintendent email us about when that's gonna be? Things like that. And I think a lot of, the president kind of controls, you can direct it, and we get some more information on that so that, maintains that control, but you're right on, I think, with that.
Or direct somebody to a staff member too. But we hear your issue and
Right.
could you please talk to so-and-so?
Right, right.
Anything else, Mr. Miller?
Mm-mm.
Other questions, comments from the board? Nope, I just have a couple. Referring to slide 31. just want to clarify, the last bullet, at a special meeting, the public comment is limited to agenda items. I just want to clarify what is considered a special meeting. This, like a workshop, I assume is considered a special meeting. Could you please?
Well, I think today is probably a regular, this was agendized 72 hours in advance. So
Okay.
this is a part of your regular meeting. I get it's a workshop before, your normal program. A special meeting is one that's agendized 24 hours beforehand. And it's whatever agenda items are on that special meeting agenda is all that can be discussed. There's no requirement you have a separate agenda item for items not on the agenda like you would at a regular meeting.
So a good rule of thumb to keep in our heads is, it's a special meeting called with truncated notice because there's an action, like that's.
Yeah, and it's even come up at times, maybe it was a situation where we needed to add something to the regular agenda, but it's less than 72 hours. So we've added on a special meeting either at the beginning or the end to address something that's more urgent that can't wait the next regular meeting. But yeah, I think that the main point was you don't have to allow for public comment on items not on the agenda at those special meetings. It's limited.
Got it. Understood. Two more items. Wanted to reiterate a comment that you made about being careful if there's a community member that's talking to several board members about an agendized item or an item that will be agendized. I just want to make sure that we're very, very crystal clear. So if a member is talking about this item and sharing information that they're hearing from other board members, that is indeed a violation. Is that correct?
It can be. I mean, I don't think it's a necessarily a bright line rule, but it can be. You can create that serial meeting through an intermediary where that individual is, like our aide, I say to that person, then she passes on to 3 other board members what your position was on an item within the jurisdiction. So I think I think that maybe the governance handbook is a good reference because it talks about when you're having those engagements with members of the public, hearing what they have to say, and being careful that, what you share could be shared with other board members.
Yep.
So it's just a cautionary message to be careful and aware that could create a serial meeting.
Appreciate that. And the last note is, can you speak a little bit about the consequences for violating the Brown Act?
Oh, sure. I think we had the last slide just talks about there's potential criminal liability if there's an intent to deprive the public. So if you're intentionally keeping things confidential or private that should be disclosed and discussed in open session, there's no secret ballots, those type of things. So if there's some intent there, could be criminal liability. There's public can sue for action to force you to comply with the Brown Act and some other liabilities there. Violation of the Brown Act can result in needing to take corrective action to correct the Brown Act violation, and it just depends on what it is. And potentially it could avoid the action that was taken if it was taken in violation. I think there's a potential, this isn't always necessarily board or district liability, can in some ways sometimes be individual to the extent it was an individually intent to do something. But again, you guys police yourselves and keep each other aware. Sometimes you do things inadvertently, like replying to all on something. Whoops, and so it's just a thing to reminders that you guys are all staying on the up and up when it comes to the Brown Act.
Appreciate it. All right, no further comments or questions for the board. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Sure.
And now we'll continue with Mr. Allen.
Thank you, President Creason. Thank you, Mr. Schutz. We appreciate your time on that matter, board, as we really wanted to give a good basis for some of this conversation as we leap into the governance handbook. What we'd like to do today is just bring back some of the topics that we talked about the last time we had the governance handbook before you. So we've done a little more research. And again, we're not going to be asking for any action today. Really, this is another opportunity for us to dive in and have some conversation with each other. It'd be staff's intent that we bring back some suggested language in the future, probably around February 28th is our goal. And then we would ask for approval at a subsequent meeting to that, actually. So we have some time to work with this. We want to make sure that we get it right and that we cover all of our bases there. So that's our intent today. And our format for our next couple of slides, don't quite have 46 on mine, will be, I just want to go through kind of topic by topic and then pause, give some opportunity for conversation and questions rather than going through the whole thing all at once, if that works for everybody. So we'll start with kind of setting vision and purpose. One of the conversations we had at our last meeting on this topic was on that mission page and setting our values, and a conversation around how do we properly reflect our focus on academics and the importance of academics in the district. So we went back and we gave that some thought, and we have some two kind of pieces of language that we'd like to put in front of you for some consideration and some brainstorming. Both come from the local control accountability plan. So this is language that's already in an adopted plan, adopted by the board, seen by the community. And this first piece is really talking about that uniqueness of the district still, but then highlights those challenging standards-based academic programs at every school, the support for students who require extra assistance, and then talking about enrichment opportunities and programs. And I'll remind folks that as we did our outreach around the superintendent search, one of those big themes that came out were some of those very themes, really supporting our students who need extra assistance, really offering opportunities for extra enrichment and growth opportunities for students. So I think that fits well with some of the community voice we've heard very recently. And again, comes from a document that we already have in place and approved. The other piece of language, again, coming just actually down a little bit lower in the local control accountability plan, just builds on that conversation a little bit. And these are our 4 focus areas out of the LCAP. So this really helps kind of give that specific direction where we are focusing a lot of our efforts right now. So again, this would be at your pleasure, but these are 2 pieces of language that we thought might be of interest to you in having that conversation about how you might want to represent the academic interests and focus of the district at this time. And I will pause there for any questions or conversation you'd like to have.
Questions, comments from the board? All right, I think you can continue, Mr. Allen.
Okay. Another topic we touched on at our last meeting was abstentions versus recusal. You will note in our current governance handbook, we have a language around abstentions, but we are kind of silent on the idea of recusal. And we did go do some digging on that and making sure that we seen what we need to do there. And we do agree that we probably should clarify that language. And just for the benefit of the conversation, want to just highlight the differences between that abstention and recusal language. Abstention is really when a board member doesn't have enough information that they are comfortable making that vote. That gives them the opportunity to say, I'm not going to put that vote forward. Should be a last resort, should not be something that, of course, is something that you use frequently, but is an option for a board member. Whereas a recusal is really when there is a conflict of interest that exists within the definitions of education code or the government code. So if there is that specific conflict of interest in the matter before the board, it is required that you recuse yourselves. A couple of examples there. So an abstention might be in approving the minutes for a previous meeting. If you were not at that meeting, you would not have that context for what had occurred at that meeting. So voting on those minutes might be something you would abstain from, versus on a recusal. If we were voting on a contract that was from a company where your significant other or a child might be the CEO or the salesperson on that contract, that would be an opportunity where you might need to recuse yourself because of that direct conflict of interest that would be defined in ed code or government code. So again, we provided some suggested language. This is modified language taken from the governance handbook. So what we've done is kind of maintained most of the abstaining language and then added the recusal language in that second paragraph. Really clarifying opportunities for when abstaining becomes appropriate, and then adding that language again on recusal there. And I will pause for any questions or thoughts you might have.
Ms. Viesquez.
I think, can you hear me? Okay, great. One question specific to this piece is just, regarding the certification of absences, actually, because that's probably where we have most of a good number of our abstentions. And it actually is not clear to me here if that would be a recusal or an abstention. Any thoughts? Given that the abstention is kind of based on a lack of information, I don't think it would qualify there. So I think it would be the recusal piece. And so I just wanted to see.
I
if-
would lean towards the recusal
Okay.
in that situation.
I don't know if there's enough interest in adding language to that effect or not, but just if that's the decision tree, that's probably 50% of our abstention. So I wanted that.
Mr. Ag, I see your light came on, but Mr. Hernandez, or were you going to speak to what Ms. Viescas just spoke about?
Similar comment, but I can wait for Mr. Hernandez. I was just, one thing that just stood out to me, I guess I've never looked it up, but I've never seen abstention kind of narrowly defined. In my experience, it's been a more broader term of people can abstain for whatever reason they want. They're not recording a vote. So, but that may actually be the definition. I've just seen it implemented differently. So.
Any information to share about our,
Commissions?
yes.
So there's a conglomeration going on here. So you will see some references to ed code pieces. The other piece that actually some of this conversation on abstaining and recusal came from is as we dug into the rules of order. So there's some language there from different variations of rules of order that informed some of this language here as well.
You asked for it, Mr. Avey. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Just a clarification on the recusal. It says that we should leave the room while that discussion is taking place. Now, so two questions. So if we were in a closed session and let's just say we're voting on expulsion, I know that child very well and I recuse myself. For this, should I leave the room? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I recognize we didn't really close the loop on Ms. Viesca's comment, and I apologize for that. So I think the question you offered was, should we clarify what you have raised, which makes sense to me. I mean, we should make it right and make it, best practice, please.
Well, and the question is maybe in the suggested language.
Is your
do we want
microphone on?
something- I don't know. I think so. It is. It says
Get it
it's
closer
green.
to your face, please.
All right, I
So
shall do
YouTube
that.
can hear you.
You will hear me. Okay, there.
Now he's.
I think given my colleague's comment as well, it actually might be better to perhaps change the suggested language to make the abstention a little bit more broader. Like I think the very specific definition that we have around recusal totally makes sense, but a slightly more generic discussion of what we mean when we say abstention might be more appropriate, given some of the input that I heard from my colleagues.
It makes sense. Thoughts from Mr. Allen, Ms. Simlick?
Something we can do.
Right. Okay. Other questions, comments? All right, back to you, Mr. Allen.
So as we alluded to, we also looked at rules of order. So this was a little bit of a rabbit hole. And we, of course, started with Robert's Rules of Order, which if you've ever dug into Robert's Rules of Order, they are lengthy and deep and very thick. And I did not find anybody in my research who says they've read the entire book. But it is indeed a book with lots of online websites that have cheat sheet versions and other pieces out there. So it is kind of considered a gold standard that some organizations do use. I will say, as we looked around, it is more common in nonprofit organizations and larger membership organizations than perhaps government agencies. One of the options we did come across as we did our research was Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which is very similar in the core elements of Robert's Rules of Order, but was developed by actually a civil servant within California for civic agencies specifically. So it is a very much slimmed down, much easier to handle version of Robert's Rules, for lack of a better term. And And then the third option that we really started to come across, and I will say is probably the more consistent and popular option, is that folks actually adopt their own sets of rules. So as you look at the state legislature, certainly Congress likes to adopt their own sets of rules. You see examples of that throughout, and that carries through to many of our local agencies as well, who will adopt their own sets of rules. So in looking at those options and considerations for you to think about, certainly we want to make sure that whatever we do go with, that we make sure that we do not have any conflicts with board bylaws, state or federal laws. So if we were to use a predetermined preset, so let's say we have language that says we use Robert's Rules of Order, we would really want to make sure we have language that says, except for when in conflict with board bylaws or state or federal laws, something to that effect. There may be specific practices that we have in our district that sometimes may conflict with some of those things. And again, on those pre-adopted options, I will highlight that sometimes those change. There are official kind of groups that monitor and modify those. So if we're saying our official rules are those official rules, we don't necessarily control when those change. So that may become problematic, and we would need to make sure we stay up on top of that and monitor that as well. And then the third consideration is really that one of the themes, regardless of which format you're looking at, that we really want to make sure we pay attention to is that we have rules that really clearly define the motion types and the order of actions that we take when we have our meetings, because that is really some of the defining work around how we operate. So whichever option we go with, we want to make sure that's absolutely perfectly clear. So even if we incorporate our own, which I think is probably an option worth exploring, that would be a focus area for those rules that we really want to bring back to you as well. So I will pause there for any conversation or questions you might have.
Questions or comments? Mr. Avey.
I will say that people at my day job laughed about this because they know my proclivity for loving bylaws and reading them. I also appreciate that you actually reference Robert's rules on the definition of abstention. I think that's a great example where it gives you a reference document to go back when you don't know the answer. I will say that I read through the Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and I really do think it is a simplified version that makes it much easier to use. My colleagues wanted to consider that. And actually, when I was talking to one of the civic organizations in Citrus Heights, they made the same recommendation, where they just switched from Robert's Rules to Rosenberg. So it seems like a simplified version that really does give you the nuts and bolts of how to handle it. And especially if you add in some language just saying when and not in conflict with the bylaws. And again, it just gives you a little bit of direction of, hey, here's the motions, here's how you handle the order. It's kind of that basic governance, especially when you don't know necessarily what to do. It gives you a rule book to follow. So I guess that's all I'd say is I really like Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and in future bylaws, I'll probably reference that rather than Robert's Rules. So thank you for that research.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Mr. Miller.
I just wanted to say, thank you for not even considering Larry's rules of complete and utter chaos. Those don't work too well.
In comment?
That's in the.
That was a great comment. Any other questions, comments from the board? Ms. Krepchek.
So I'm just looking for clarification. After this discussion, do we vote on what we're
No action
proceeding
today.
with? No action today. So this is just feedback, and then at some point we decide on how we're going to do things.
You will be asked to vote on the changes to the governance handbook, but it will not be today. We will bring you some suggested changes for another discussion and review. And then probably a second meeting after that, we will ask for an actual vote.
Okay, because it pertains to the meeting today, and because both of Roberts and Rosenberg's Rule of Order differ from our bylaws, I'm still unclear on what the definition of abstention is. So I'd like to get just more clarity today. Is it for the purposes of today's meeting? Are there only 3 reasons why you can abstain? Or can they be more broad? It's on page 8 of our bylaw or our governance handbook.
as staff will, oh, go ahead, Mr. Allen.
Nope, go ahead.
I mean, my thought is we need to go by the rules that we have. Nothing has changed yet. So what our bylaws say, what the handbook says is what we need to do. Mr. Allen.
Well, and I concur with that. Sorry, I'm gonna jump in
No,
real
it's
quick, Ms. Creason,
Please.
which is that the reason it was brought up was because it doesn't state anything. So
Oh, well, there you
can't
go.
really assume for any reason.
I
for the
didn't get to
purposes of
page
this
8
meeting.
fast enough to see what it actually said.
It says how to abstain, but it doesn't say for what purpose. So you can really abstain for. any
Well,
purpose.
and that is actually what I wanted to reference was the specific language in the current handbook, which reads abstaining on a vote must be announced at the time the topic is first brought up and shall be based on one of the following. The matter affects a close relative of the board member. The vote is to replace the board member's position on the board or remote interests as listed in Government Code Section 1091. So it does provide a specific list of reasons to abstain, which again, as we really look at that definition of recusal and abstention, I think we have some confused definitions here, to be honest. But that is our current language.
Ms.
And our-
Krepchuk, did you have a follow-up question, a thought?
No, I don't think so. I have lots of thoughts, but nothing that I could, I'm still confused. Only because that's different from even abstaining because you don't have enough information or you weren't here. So are we using this?
We're using what exists right now. Yes. Yes. And we are having the conversation to grow and get stronger and to make things better. So I think all of us are going to have a lot to think about after, this presentation, and staff can be directed to, go back and make it stronger and better and make it make sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Serious this time. Just to talk a little bit about family member, because I do have one that works for the district. Voting on something that affects him. In one instance, I think I'd have to recuse, but voting for a contract with all the teachers, that's
Yeah.
broad enough in general, applies to everybody, not just my family members. So I wanted to make that clear. And then I've voted, or I've abstained when I didn't agree with the majority on a yes vote, but not so much that I wanted to vote no. And let's say I was just holding on for one item. And let's say we're in, 6 members want to give, the employees 3% and I'm stuck on 2.9. I'm going to abstain because I don't want to vote no on it. That's happened. So, you're not against the motion.
Yeah, I understand.
Maybe 1% you are. And so it's just enough for you to say, look, I'm standing my ground. I'm hanging my hat on this one item and I'm abstaining. Or you could vote no. I don't care.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Viescas?
I just wanted to offer kind of my thoughts on the rules of order, kind of in the interest of next steps. It seems like perhaps Rosenberg's might be a good place to start, but I don't want to quite yield the opportunity to not make some changes until we have kind of a more detailed presentation on exactly what that is. So perhaps something in the middle between Rosenberg's and kind of incorporating specific rules of order into the governance handbook with using Rosenberg's as the base with amendments as we might see appropriate might be a path forward for consideration.
I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Do I see any head nods the other way? I don't think I do. So yes, I agree. Other comments, questions from the board before I do mine? Okay.
If I may, President.
Please.
Just from my observation, the Brown Act or bylaws don't require you to adopt a particular parliamentary procedure. And a lot of your parliamentary procedures already built into dictated by the Brown Act anyways. We have to agendas, certain type of public comment. I think when you have something like Rosenberg come into play is when you have conflicting emotions or some other maybe not as common situations. I think one of the things that we often see in governance handbooks is not, we're going to adopt this and use it wholesale because really that can inhibit the ability of you to conduct your meeting. It becomes too restricted. But use it as a reference. Say we're gonna use Rosenberg or whatever as a reference or as guidance if needed in the future when there's a question on parliamentary procedure. That's been gives you some flexibility And then also recognizes the fact that you already have a lot of parliamentary procedure built in because of your bylaws in the Brown Act.
Thank you. My thought, I'm in agreement with Ms. Viasquez. I like the idea of not adopting one rule for a variety of reasons. But there's good stuff to be picked out. And so I would love to see another presentation so we can pull out what applies to us, and then the board has a chance to digest what's in front of us, and we can dream up, because we have had an issue of a conflicting motion on the table and we want to know what to do. So maybe we can get some more information based on this presentation or the information from the board of where we could go from here, allow us to digest it. We can offer more, like where we need more guidance. So I think we could spend some time on this, right? Are we in a time frame that this has to be done in a month or? So yeah, I from my perspective, and I'm wondering if it's the will of the board, let's spend our time on it and make it right. Okay, and then going back to Ms. Krevchek's comment about the questions about what abstain mean. In my experience working in state policy for quite some time, there's a variety of reasons why abstain is used, but I know it's my experience that the community would like to see their representatives take a stand, right? Vote on the issue in front of you. So that's something that's just kind of front of mind for me when I think about the idea of an abstain vote. So I'm just throwing it out there as, just my experience. So I think moving forward, it would great to see maybe some options of what our abstain language could look like based on this conversation. And again, we could spend some time making it what we really need it to be. But for now, we go with what's been previously approved. What's the will of does that sound right to my colleagues?
That's okay.
Not terrible idea? Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Allen?
That is all we have for you.
All right. Did you need, I'm sorry, Mr. Avey.
Point of order.
Sorry.
Mr. Miller, let him speak.
So one aspect that wasn't addressed here, but I think I brought up last time, which is the role of virtual public comment and its placement within the governance handbook. And I think part of the conversation was, is that a bylaw issue? Is it a policy issue? Is it a governance handbook issue? But it is something that I do see as a governance handbook issue, because that does detail the role of public comment before this board. And I think that this board should take serious consideration of allowing virtual public comment at board meetings. As a parent, you all know that I am your favorite gadfly in public comment. And I will say that there were times where there were issues that were important to me. And I was watching from home and I was telling YouTube what I thought. But I did not have the ability to provide virtual comment because I was not able to secure daycare to come to that meeting that night. And so I think virtual comment opens up a pathway to communicating, to hearing for the public. I know that there are downsides to it, but I think if we want to hear from families, we have to make it easy for families to actually access and make public comment. Conversely, I do need to point out that after the district stopped allowing virtual public comment at board meetings, there were district staff that offered virtual public comment at other agencies, specifically the Citrus Heights City Council, where Citrus Heights City Council had an issue. District staff needed to provide comment. They did so using virtual comment, even though they had in-person comment. I say that to just share that the need for virtual comment, it's there. And we've seen it from our own employees. And so I think it's appropriate for us to extend that. I don't know if that goes in the governance handbook, but I think that's the place where I saw it, because those are the rules we follow. Separate from that, as we're talking about the governance handbook, I think it may also be important to bring back the bylaws at the same time, or at least look at how do we cross-reference the governance handbook and the bylaws to make sure that they're not in conflict. And if we do have to update the bylaws to adjust for the handbook, we should probably make sure that those are addressed on the same schedule. And that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Any other final thoughts or questions from the board? Any further guidance needed from the board, Mr. Allen?
No, I don't think so. We will be bringing back to you some language options. I think we'll probably have a good conversation when we bring this back next, because we'll be able to dig into some of those specific options. And again, we don't have necessarily a hard timeline. We have to have this finished, so we can take our time. We will certainly, as we go through all of these topics, we do cross-reference with bylaws. So any bylaws that reference, we will certainly point those out. And if we do see any conflicts, we will certainly highlight any of those conflicts for you as well. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment? We do not have any public comment. I think I've confirmed there's no further board comments or questions. So thank you so much for the presentation, the discussion from my colleagues. We're now going to take a brief recess before closed session, which begins at 5:30. Thanks, everybody. I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified Board of Education back to order. There are two closed session items on tonight's agenda: student expulsion in one case and student readmission in one case, Education Code Section 48918. One personnel matter, superintendent's goals, Government Code Section 54957. Do we have speaker comment? We do not have any speaker cards on the closed session agenda items. We will now move into closed session and will return to open session at 6:30 p.m. I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified Board of Education back to order. The meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording may capture sounds and images of those attending this meeting. The recording will be posted on the district's website. Board meetings are being held in person in the boardroom at the district office, and the community is welcome to attend. The meeting may also be viewed on the district's YouTube channel where it is being live streamed. Please stand for the presentation of colors by the Del Campo High School Air Force Junior ROTC.
Arch. Color guard, hope. Peace and. Colors. Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here. Colors. Colors. Colors, arch.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Zima Creason, Board President. To my left is Ms. Pam Costa, Board Vice President. To her left is Mr. Steve Miller, Board Clerk. And to his left is Mr. Ben Avey, Ms. Paula Viesquez, and Ms. Tanya Krevchek, and Mr. Saul Hernandez, Board members. To my right is Superintendent Melissa Bassinelli, and to her right is Board Administrative Assistant Stephanie Cunningham. Individuals who are attending this meeting and would like to offer a public comment, we ask that you complete a speaker request card available at the staff table, and you will be called on at the appropriate time during the agenda. Please note that Board Bylaw 9323 limits visitor comment to 2 minutes per speaker, with no more than 30 minutes per single topic. Time will be extended for any speaker who uses an interpreter. Please note that public comments, including your name, become part of the public record. We are now at item E, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Costa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Krochek. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes. Oh,
Sorry, I'd like to abstain.
I apologize for not calling that question. Any abstentions?
One abstention.
One
Yes,
abstention. All right, so the motion passes 6-0 with one abstention. We are now at item F1, recognitions. Tonight, we have two recognitions. We will begin with the 2023 Classified Employee of the Year, Mr. Orapollo.
President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. It gives us great pleasure to introduce to you the three classified employees of the year for 2022 for the San Juan Unified School District. To get us started, I would like you to help me welcome Ms. Karen Smith, who is stepping in for Terry Hofstetler, who is stepping in for our board for the CSEA president, who is not here tonight to say a few words regarding the Classified Employee of the Year award winners for 23. So ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Karen Smith.
President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. It is our honor to stand here to speak on behalf of CSEA and all its members and congratulating our employees of the year here at San Juan Unified. As you know, Adara is home with her newborn and Terry has laryngitis, so I've been asked to step in as past president of CSEA. CSEA would like to congratulate Michelle Fingold, Sally Garcia, and Rita Cornelison on their outstanding work here at San Juan Unified. These employees have set an example of how talent combined with excellent work leads to the success of individual fields of expertise. They continue to play a crucial role in the support and success of San Juan Unified School District's outstanding service to students, parents, and staff. Their hard work and dedication goes above and beyond in every day. No matter the situation, they always rise to the occasion. Thank you for showing everyone that dedication. Nothing is impossible. Your work and ethics and outstanding performance are an inspiration to all. Thank you.
So at this time, if I could have our three winners come and accompany me at the stand, and I'll start with Michelle at my side. So Michelle, if you'll come on up, Ms. Cornelison and Ms. Garcia, if you'll come on up and have seats down here beside me. You can stand right here, right beside me. There you go. So our first winner is Michelle Fingold. Michelle was hired in 2012 and has worked as an instructional assistant for orthopedic visually impaired students at Casa Roble High School. Michelle's work as an IA is so commendable and sought after that the teachers often fight over her, whose class she will be supporting. In addition, her hard work has been noticed beyond the Casa Roble family, as she has been asked to work with the district for future IA guidelines as well as best practices for our IAs. Nominator Krista Harden said, although I believe this is the most beneficial for IAs in our district to perform similar duties, I believe that what Michelle brings to the classroom and to our students far exceeds what can be described on paper. On behalf of the board and behalf of the district, Michelle, congratulations. Okay, Ms. Sally, come on up next. You can stand right here beside me. So our second winner is Miss Sally Garcia. And Sally was hired in 2011 and is currently the custodian for the district office. According to her nominator, Renee Zander, Sally goes above and beyond because she cares about people. And you do. She shows this by her upbeat personality and friendly demeanor. Sally always seems to know everyone by name and just fosters great working relationships. If there is a problem at the district office, Sally will know who to go to. She'll also make sure that each one of us are taken care of. And as a person who has been on the receiving end of Sally's gifts, we just want to say thank you so much for what you do for us. And we really, really value you and are appreciative of what you bring to this office. You're an outstanding employee, but you're an even better person. Congratulations, Ms. Garcia. Our third winner is Miss Rita Cornelison. So Miss Cornelison, if you'll come up here beside me. So Miss Cornelison has been with the district since 1999, and she started with us as a clerk and is currently a human resource analyst. According to her nominator, somebody named Paul or Apollo, she is a perfect example of conscientious, dedicated employee who is also humble in her accomplishments. And I can speak to this, that Rita is the person, when people come up to her, they come up with this feeling of being taken care of. And in human resources, we are taking care of not only the human resources within our department, but also the human resources for the San Juan district. And Rita has been a leader in this area. She communicates very succinctly what she needs to do. She trains our department effectively. And beyond that, she is a wonderful human being. So on behalf of the board, and behalf of the San Juan district, congratulations, Rita, as our 23. Before I conclude, President Creason, if there are any members here in the audience who are supporting our employees of the year, would you please stand, family and friends? Thank you for being here to recognize our 3 distinguished employees of the year for 2023. It is my pleasure also to acknowledge Ms. Diana Marshall, our Human Resources Manager, for her leadership in the district, and also recognize the excellent work of Cheryl Mayo, the Human Resources Administrative Assistants. Without their assistance, this wonderful recognition would not have happened so seamlessly this evening. We appreciate all of you and all of you for the work that you do in taking care of our employees. So on behalf of the district, thank you very much, President Creason.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Viescaz.
I just want to say thanks to all of the honorees, but also to the membership who shows up. I always love this presentation day because as much as it is fully about showing up for the honorees who show up for us and our community and our students every day, it's just always heartwarming to see how CSEA members show up for each other as well. And I think it really makes the work that much easier and more fulfilling to do. But there's absolutely no doubt that our schools and our community could not run without every one of the dedicated members, both here and at each of our campuses. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Absolutely. Ms. Costa.
I'd just like to say ditto, and I would like to give you a standing ovation. Thank you so much.
I too just want to extend my thanks. First, congratulations to all the awardees, but just general thanks, because as my colleagues noted, none of this works without you. It just doesn't. Several of us now have kids in the district and, are directly impacted by your work. And I really just can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for being here and for all you do.
Yay.
I feel like we should clap again after one more time. You deserve all. All right. So our next recognition is for National School Counseling Week. Ms. Schnapp.
Good evening, President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. The superintendent is recommending that the board adopt Resolution A419, proclaiming the week of February 6th as National School Counseling Week. This resolution will celebrate the unique contributions of professional school counselors within our school system. School counselors assist students, families, and staff, and they are an integral element of our educational system. And here at San Juan, we are so thankful for the ways that our counselors foster academic, career, and social emotional development. And with me tonight is Director of College and Career Readiness, Brett Wolf, and Tracy Locke, our lead counselor. Tracy will join me here at the podium to share a few words on behalf of our school counselors.
Thank you. Thank you. Couldn't have said it better, but I will try. I am here. I am a proud San Juan Unified school counselor. school counselors change lives. We enlighten, we advocate, we support all students. We focus on solution-focused approaches and short-term skill development. Site-based school counselors create comprehensive programs that reach all students in college, career, academic, and social emotional development. I'm going to indulge me in a few highlights that cover kind of the breadth of what we do. Our elementary school counselors are site-based, working on a K-5 scope and sequence to focus on a uniform approach to the tier 1 school counseling lessons, K-5. Last year, 90% of our 8th graders had a high school 4-year plan in Naviance, which is our online college and career supporting tool that we use. And 4 of our high school programs recently went through a very extensive professional development 2-year program with the Sacramento County Office of Education that aligned their practice and their programs with the American School Counselors Association national standards. Not to mention, a little brag, San Juan Unified is leading Sacramento County in the dual enrollment participation with American River College. A lot of work, a lot of great work done by a lot of great people. And not to mention, on top of managing innumerable crises, small and big. With everything that is thrust upon us with the pandemic, we pivot regularly and meet the needs of everybody. So I'm really proud to represent them as their lead, and I thank you for the recognition. I will happily bring this back to them and recognize your support. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, are there any questions?
Questions, comments from the board?
I do, yeah.
Ms.
sorry.
Viescas, I couldn't tell. Thank you.
No worries. I'm gonna turn my green light your
There's a green light
direction.
that, yeah. Thank you. Ms. Viescas.
I just want to say a thank you as well to all of our school counselors throughout the district and for the incredible work that you all do. I feel like every year I've been a member of this board, I've said this work is more important than ever. And that just continues to be the case. And that often just means that plates are growing with more stuff. I know we have done our best to expand your ranks, but it's still just a lot of additional things that get added to that plate. And as a former student who relied on their school counselor, who was not only a trusted adult in their lives going through as a student, but even now is a dear friend of mine and turned into a peer of mine. I know firsthand the important work that you all do, and I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll keep it going.
Any other comments, questions for the board? I just also want to extend my thank you for all that you do. So often, school counselors are the first line of support for students in a variety of ways. And thank goodness you're there. And as my colleague mentioned, the workforce shortage is real throughout education, but especially in this workforce, right? So I'm just thankful for all that you do. I know it's a lot. I know you hear a lot. We don't talk we don't talk enough about the things you hear every day. And we're talking about little people and how that must wear on your heart. And so thank you for being so strong for our young ones. Really, really appreciate you.
We've actually are starting a professional development about compassion fatigue and meeting with all of the other mental health professionals and working on how we can work together as teams to support each other through that. So
I am
Thank
so happy to hear that because it's real, especially, I mean, even in the best of times when you have all the players and the support that you need, it's hard, but you're doing double, triple duty to make sure all of our kids are taken care of. So I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. It's that whole, put your oxygen mask on first.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank you.
all that you do. We're going to do another applause in just a moment, but let's take care of this business. Is there a motion to adopt resolution number A419 proclaiming February 6th through 10th as National School Counseling Week?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Casa. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Krevchek. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed? That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at item F2, High School Student Council Reports. Tonight, we will hear from student representatives from Del Campo High School and Bella Vista. Welcome, and let's begin with Jordan Bickle from Del Campo.
Good evening, President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. My name is Jordan Bickle, and thank you for inviting me back to talk about what has been happening at Del Campo. Second block is just beginning at Del Campo. Being able to have 4 new classes halfway through the school year prevents burnout in students and also allows for students on campus to complete more credits yearly than other schools. My peers all talk positively about having a block schedule and enjoy having new teachers after winter break. Winter sports at DC are coming to a close. Our girls and boys basketball have had great seasons and are looking to finish it off strong. Girls soccer has done well this season and appears to be in the run for playoffs. Boys soccer is doing amazing too, as they are looking to make playoffs for the first time in over 10 years. Coming up this Friday, Del Campo is having its annual Powder Puff game. It's a flag football game between the 11th and 12th grade girls on campus. Juniors and seniors have been practicing for a little over 2 weeks at this point, and the campus seems to be fairly excited about the event. Since our snack bar is under construction for the time being, there will be a Kiki's food truck out on the blacktop to serve as a food option for the night. The game begins at 6 p.m. and there's a $5 gate fee. During the week of January 17th to January 20th, Del Campo hosted the event Breaking Down the Walls. To start, 70 juniors and seniors were brought in on Tuesday to be trained to help lead activities during the event. We learned different activities which helped people to tell their stories and tell people about who they truly are. Starting on Wednesday, 200 kids were brought into our Cub Gym on campus to attend the first day of Breaking Down the Walls. This happened every day until Friday. In my own experience, I got to be a leader and a participant during this event. The event was so eye-opening for me. The leader, Mr. Mike, led numerous games and activities to aid us in feeling comfortable with one another. One activity that stood out to me particularly was when Mr. Mike had us step forward if the statement that he read applied to you. An example of this was, if your parents are divorced, please cross the line. And then he said, if you are worried that your parents may soon be divorced, please join them. He did this for probably 50 topics, including very intense and sensitive topics like drug abuse, death, and even suicide. It was honestly so shocking to see the story behind so many kids I have seen every day, pass by in the hallway, or even have a class with. A story I never would have known without this experience. I have already felt a culture shift on campus following this activity. People, in my opinion, seem to be more friendly and outgoing. Prior to this experience, I feel like students on campus kept to themselves in their small friend groups. Now walking around on campus, there's a new level of friendship. The leader breaking down the wall said, it is hard to hate someone once you know their story. And I can truly see that in full effect today on campus. Now that we have a greater understanding that everyone has their own individual story, their own secret, and their own internal battles, it is harder to act like we are on our own in this world. The campus just as a whole feels more united. Staying on the topic of unity on campus, Sportsorama is coming up. Sportsorama is a Class V class event in which all 4 class levels compete in athletic challenges, along with performing a stomp introduction and a skit based on whatever the class chooses as a theme. Sportsorama will be held at Del Campo on March 10th from 6:30 to 9, with doors opening at 6 p.m. Every class is currently in the middle of picking the themes, and they will be announced very soon. I appreciate your time this evening and look forward to speaking with you again. If you would like to come to the Powder Puff game this Friday, I want to take this time now to remind you it begins at 6 p.m. and there's a $5 entry fee. The revenue from tickets will go directly back into the class fund that you declare support to. Juniors' color is pink and seniors' color is black. So I expect you all to show up in black. Thank you once more for your attention and have a great night.
Thank you so much. Any comments, questions from the board? So I do. First of all, wonderful presentation. Really appreciate your time and all of your energy to prepare for it. I know it's a whole lot. Thank you for sharing that activity. I participated in that activity many, many moons ago. And the opportunity, I mean, our brains just fill in gaps of what we don't know. It's just how humans work, right? But when it's in your face that there's people with their own lived experience and their own challenges, maybe similar to yours, maybe not, but a recognition everyone's going through some kind of struggle in their own way, really can build bonds. And it sounds like it really worked on your campus. So thank you so much for sharing that story. It's a big deal. And I think that more people should participate in that activity to break down some walls and bring people together.
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Again,
you.
one more round of applause. Next, we'll hear from Navia Al-Karwani. Please correct me if I got it wrong. From Bella Vista. I forgot the last part.
Good evening, President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. I'm Navia Alkarwani, and I'm one of the social and cultural representatives from Bella Vista High School. Thank you for inviting us to share all the amazing things happening at Bella Vista. In December, we had our annual Winter Ball Dance that the sophomore class hosted as their fundraiser. The theme was Winter in the City and had a great turnout since this was our first Winter Ball in a few years. Coming up, the freshmen will be hosting Cupid's Ball, with a theme of sweethearts, where students dress in pastel colors, like the candy. Juniors and seniors are currently planning their upcoming prom and senior ball, which will happen in April and May. Winter sports are nearing an end, with our boys varsity soccer team being second in league, as well as our freshman girls soccer team being first in league. Boys and girls basketball are having amazing turnouts during their games with a strong Rowdy Rooter section, always cheering them on. All spring sports are beginning conditioning and excited to be back for the season. Clash of Classes will be held either March 16th or March 17th, and this is one of our biggest events of the year. Each class will create their own flag football team and compete to be the winning team. Last year, the sophomore class won a second place and are eager to gain the championship title. We welcome you to come watch the fun games and see the Bronco Pride in action. Bella Vista is well known for our championship titles in both academic decathlon and moot court. Both moot court teams begin competing tonight and hope to remain champions after winning this past school year. Due to this competition, the other social and cultural representative, Ashley Harrow, could sadly not be here tonight. There will be two other qualifying rounds, January 26th and 31st at the downtown courthouse from 6 to 8:30. Academic decathlon just had their essay portion of competition and will compete for the county title February 4th at Folsom High School. We would encourage you to attend to see our strong scholar teams compete. Our drama department is currently working on their spring performance of Legally Blonde. They are so excited to put on this wonderful show and demonstrate their amazing talents. They invite you to attend to watch the show March 25th to 27th and March 30th through April 1st. Lastly, to highlight and report back on our job on campus, our social and cultural awareness campaigns are growing. In December, we held our first ever De-Stress Week, and it was a great success. All week during lunch, we had special activities for students to take the time to relax prior to finals. Monday, we had yoga. Tuesday was mindfulness, and Wednesday, we had an awesome petting zoo, which wouldn't have been possible without Casa Robles FFA for bringing the animals. Thursday was snacks and a movie, and finishing off the week on Friday was mindful coloring. Each day, we had several students participate, and it was heartwarming to see our activities actually being used. The previous year, we struggled to gain attendance for our monthly awarenesses, but now with holding new activities, we're finally getting the response we hoped for and are hopefully helping the campus. February will be our Anti-Racism, Equity, and Diversity Month. We will show weekly videos to educate our students on how to stop racism and discrimination, but also to recognize what students can do to make a change. Each month, we will continue to work to highlight critical topics and create a better place on campus. As the school year comes to an end, we hope to continue our various activities in order to maintain a positive culture for our students in school. Thank you so much for having me here this evening and taking the time to hear about the events happening at our school. It is an honor to represent the interests of Bella Vista at these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your report. Questions, comments from the board? Ms. Vies, oh, no, just joking. Mr. Avey.
Thank you very much, Navi. I really appreciate you coming out tonight. And I will say, I love the kind of juxtaposition of how dominant Bella Vista is in so many sports and activities. No competition, but at the same time, I appreciate how you collaborated with Casa Roble, right? And having their FFA come over. And I think that's a really good balance where you're competitive, you're pushing it, but at the same time, you understand where those limits stop and you can come together and you can work together as a community. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for coming out for the presentation.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Again, want to echo my thanks and also want to call out a couple of things that you brought up. I love that you did the de-stress week in recognition of this is a very stressful time. What can we do to bring that level down? Because folks just do better when you can take care of that whole self if you really want to achieve and perform at that high level. So it's great to hear everything that you're doing, but that really stood out to me in that wonderful, wonderful report. And I love Casa's animals as known to many in this room. So you got to tell me, were the baby goats there? Are there any baby goats right now? Or are they the big goats?
They were big goats.
Oh, they're
But
cool
there was
too.
many goats. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love the goats. Now you're gonna have to do next stress relief
These turned into.
week. Think about baby goat yoga and invite me. So thanks again so much for your report. Student voice is incredibly important to the board, and we very much appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Thanks again. Okay, we are at items F3 through F6, and we do not have any reports from staff, board appointed district committees, employee organizations, or other district committees. So that brings us to F7, closed session expulsion actions. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, President Creason. The board in closed session voted unanimously to accept as written one stipulated expulsion in case number S23 and one denied enrollment in case RA03.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We are now at item G, visitor comments. Do we have any speakers card? We do. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. The clock on the screen counts down the time. Under the Ralph M. Brown Act, the board is not allowed to comment on items that are not on the agenda. So we're not ignoring your comments. We just can't respond to any individual comments. The superintendent can refer items to staff who can follow up with you. Ms. Rye, please facilitate public comment.
Sorry about that. We do have one visitor comment, Mr. Paul Reyes.
Madam President, esteemed board, my name is Paul Reyes. I'm a member of American Legion Post 637 in Citrus Heights, 22-year veteran of the Marine Corps and a 2-tour veteran of a small little skirmish we were involved in called Vietnam. Reason I'm here is on March 28th this year, the Wall That Heals will arrive in Citrus Heights. The Wall That Heals is an 80% size replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Reason I'm here is to ask for your help, your support, in that I would like to get the information to contact all the principals or vice principals of the schools in Citrus Heights to have them bring their kids out. There's going to be a learning center, tours through the learning center as well as the wall. If that is possible, if you can get with Mr. Miller, my good friend, Mr. Miller, he can get me the information. And we'd love to have the kids to teach them properly, for lack of a better term, what it was all about. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment.
Could I ask a question, President?
Of me?
Of Paul?
I don't think we could do back and forth because it's,
We just went over that this afternoon. I just have a question of what the dates
oh,
are
yes,
and
please.
where, a little more
It's
detail.
the wall arrives the evening of the 28th. It gets constructed starting at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 29th, which happens to be Vietnam Veterans Day. Opening ceremonies will be that evening. It will be open 24 hours and it will shut down at 2 p.m. on Sunday, April 2nd.
And where's this at?
It will be on display at Rush Park in Citrus Heights.
And do we necessarily have to limit it to Citrus Heights students, or can we open?
Beg your pardon?
Do we necessarily have to limit it to Citrus Heights students, or could we open it
No.
up to the school district?
No, sir. Any schools that information you can get me, I will contact them and see about bringing their kids out. We can do up to 100 students per hour. About every hour and a half, a new tour will start. But there will be adults, obviously, that will be taking care of them.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you so much for your comment. Staff will be following up with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
And that was our final visitor comment.
Okay, thank you so much. We are now at item H, consent calendar. Do any board members wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? Ms. Krepchek?
Items 6 and 15, please.
Ms. Viescaz?
I would like to remove item 16. That was already, you said 15, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes, 16.
So 6, 15, 16? Mr. Avey, I thought I saw your light come on.
Yeah.
Already covered? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items excluding items 6, 15, and 16? Moved by Mr. Hernandez,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Avy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That was unanimous. Let's start with item 6, which was pulled by Ms. Krivchek.
I just like a little bit of discussion around this, and I apologize. I was traveling, so I didn't have a chance to check in with staff. But I'd like some more information. I think next to the budget, this report is probably the most important thing that we will look at throughout the year. So I have just a few questions of, I know that we have to approve it to send it to the state, so I don't have a problem with voting on that. But I'd like maybe some context of when it is. I think that there was a presentation sometime last year with the old board, but is there going to be one for this existing board? Is there some type of training orientation that happens? And then how often do we look back on this report? How do we utilize this in our LCAP plan or just throughout the year? I just would like a little bit more context. So that's the reason why I removed it.
Superintendent Bassanelli?
So the school accountability report cards are annually placed on consent. The data that we provide that it helps populate this was received by the board in the fall in an end of year data summary, as well as the California dashboard helps populate this data as well. So this is not an item that gets presented in specific to the schools because these represent all of the schools' accountability report cards. So this is related to those individual items. The larger data set was presented to the board in the fall in October.
Okay. So my question remains, is there a plan to do that for the existing board or maybe the 3 new board members?
We can meet with the 3 new board members if that's the pleasure of the new members to review the data that was shared back in October and to talk more about the SARCs. Is that what I'm hearing?
For myself, yes.
That'd be nice
Okay.
at our next one-on-one.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then one more question in general pardon my lack of understanding, is this data, does this become, it's new data every year, so we get a presentation. I guess my suggestion would be for the future, and maybe this will happen if we get a presentation in October, but I think that I would have liked to have this information when we were voting on the budget, just sort of as context for equity mindset of what schools get, what services, just, and maybe this is too simplistic as a new board member that I think this, but in general, I think that it would be great to have some sort of presentation prior to, which it sounds like you had, prior to the budget discussion for the year.
Yeah, and we did. And then when you receive, you'll be receiving a mid-year update next month related to our LCAP that also has some measurable outcomes too. And that will feed forward into when the board receives the budget later in this year, again in June. So we brought it in October, the budget comes in December. We can continue that rhythm. We can also discuss if there's other ways the board would like to receive that data or timelines.
Thank you.
Mr. Avy?
Thank you, Ms. Krivchek, for your questions. I shared some of those same questions. So I did watch the presentation in October. I actually went back last night and rewatched it again. And it was a helpful presentation. I think it provided a lot of context, especially within the realm of looking at the report card and test scores from a population perspective, from a meta district-wide perspective. And I also appreciated at the time the context that was provided about why scores were so different between 2019 and I believe it was 2021. Those were the comparisons. What I found when I dug into the school accountability report cards was actually a different level of context that I didn't see presented in October. Mainly, I saw district scores compared to the state as a whole. Looking at the district, almost benchmarking where we're at as a district compared to where the state is. And I mean, I'm new to this, but in English language arts, we were 4% below the state average. In math, we were 4% below the state average. In the dropout rate, we were 3.9 points, I think that might be percent, above the state average. And our graduation rate was 5.4 points below the state average. Now, I think that's important context when we look at for ourselves year over year, how we're improving, how we're growing, how we're becoming stronger. But I think we also, and maybe it's at this point when we look at the school accountability report cards, where we can also baseline ourselves on what's going on in the rest of the state. Because a lot of the context that I heard in October had to do with issues similar to every other district in the state. I think the one main difference I saw was around English language learners and some of the data issues that we had around that. But most of the other context to explain what happened to our students academically, it was shared by other districts. And so that brings to me the question of what's going on to the point that we're below average in the state of California. And looking at it not just as a, let's identify the problem, I think there's an opportunity for us as a board to have two data sets to look at. I think the year-end report that was provided and the path forward was invaluable because that clearly showed, hey, here's what's going on. Here's our year over year. Here's the comparison to what happened last year. And here's what we're doing about it. It was very comprehensive. But I think the second layer of it, and maybe that's where the accountability report cards come in, is we can look at it at a school site level. Because I will say those report cards were pretty phenomenal. I think they're about 25 pages and they go in depth in a lot of areas that I hadn't even seen on the dashboard. And so I think it may be an opportunity for us to take a second look and take a different approach to the data to understand what neighborhoods are more vulnerable, what neighborhoods are struggling, in addition to the population where we look at what student sectors are struggling. So I think for me as a board member, I see it almost as a two-phase approach. And I think this is a good point for that second phase, unless for some reason there's a good reason why we shouldn't. To be honest, I'm going to print them all out and put them in a binder because I think it's just good reference material for when you're doing a school site, here's my baseline of information. So I think that's why I was going to pull it as well. Because next to the budget and next to the end of your report, I feel like this is one of the most important things we can be looking at because this is going to help us get a gauge of where we are with student achievement. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Avey.
I'm open to further discussion. Perhaps it happens in our one-on-ones because the data that populates the SARC is also, it's last year data that we also shared. So I'd just like to have further discussion about that. Perhaps we can do that in our one-on-ones. Okay.
Any other comments, questions from the board on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve item H6?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Costa. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Krevchek. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That was unanimous. Next, let's take up item 15, also pulled by Ms. Krevchek.
I'm still getting up to speed on information regarding this school, and there has been a lot of public comment regarding it. And I would just like to abstain from this. At this time, I don't feel like I have enough information to vote, so I'm abstaining from this.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Mr. Miller?
I was just going to move the item.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Costa. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? One. Motion passes 6-1. And next up, item H16 was pulled by Ms. Viescaz.
I pulled this because it's the certification of my own absence. So I'm going to go ahead and abstain from this. Thank you.
Understood. Is there a motion to approve
Or
item
you
H16?
So moved.
Moved by, oh, I'm sorry. Was there? I apologize. Any comments, questions from the board?
No.
I thought that was, I'm sorry. Oops.
Let's make it a joke.
You sure? Okay. All right.
Part of the diocese is like half jokesters, so.
Got it. Okay. I got it. All right. Moved by Ms. Costa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That was unanimous.
One abstention.
Oh, goodness. Now I'm just messing up. That was 6-1. With a 6 ayes, 1 abstention, motion passes. I apologize. We will now move on to our business items. Mr. Miller says yay. We are at item J1, bond program update. Mr. Camarda. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you and good evening, President Creason, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli and Ms. Cunningham. We do an annual report to the board about our progress on the bond program update. Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to give a little bit of a historical context for our new board members. We'd like to go back in time and go ahead and highlight some of the projects that have been completed prior to this board, and then some of the things that we're doing and currently going on right now, and then what we have planned for the future. So I'll go ahead and do part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nicholas Arps, our Director of Facilities Construction, to go into a little bit more detail as it pertains to the projects that we have currently. So again, we're going to talk about the history of our past projects. We're going to talk about those completed projects and some of our current projects. We're going to talk about our furniture replacement plan. It's very detailed. There's a lot of sites that are getting new furniture. They're very excited about that. So we want to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to be here available for questions that the board may have. So up here, you have the master plan priorities. These priorities were developed in 2014 by a series of site and community-based meetings. You'll see the high schools, middle schools, K-8s and elementary schools had a chance to weigh in on what those priorities are. All of those priorities were adopted into our master plan. Adopted into our master plan. What you'll see is themes throughout this bond presentation, that the priorities in our master plan are being represented tonight in the bond presentation when you see the type of projects that have been completed and the current project and the future projects that are being planned. A little bit about the process. We use our facilities master plan very deeply. They're loaded with condition assessments and grade points as far as what their conditions are. That's our first point of reference. We want to take a look at our facilities master plan and find out what our conditions are. So we do that. We take a really deep dive into our enrollment projections. We look at demographic analysis. We want to ensure that we're investing money into areas where we may have some upticks of enrollment. You'll notice again in our presentation that you're going to see that on the west side of town, where we've had our largest increase in populations, it also coincides with our master plan condition assessment. So not only do we have our demographic analysis that shows we need to add capacity on the west side, our master plan also calls out that these schools also are some of the lowest assessed schools as far as their conditions are concerned. So we use that data point. We also use site assessments. So we do, what are we currently looking at today? Not only did we have our analysis done in 2014, what are the sites looking like today? How can we further assess their condition based on where they were in 2014, where they are now? We also look at our maintenance records as well to see how many work orders are outstanding and the condition of our equipment and all the type of building equipments that we have to assess as we're starting to plan a modernization or new construction. And then finally, we look at our state funding opportunities. The state matches funding. They do a modernization match or they do a new construction match. Some of that's based on our eligibility. So that's part of the data set that we use. We want to maximize the taxpayer bond funds by going after the school facilities funding that's available in matching grants, 60% or 40% for modernization and a 50-50 on new construction. So with that information, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Director Mr. Nicholas Arps, and he'll go into the details of the projects. Thank you, Board.
So thank you, Mr. Camarda. I get to do the fun part of running through what we've accomplished so far and what's up in the future. So a lot of these pictures you might have seen before. You know, this is spanning over the last 7-8 years that the bond project program has been been active. We got the stadium projects. Most of our high schools got all new synthetic track and fields to accommodate their sites. Sylvan went through a full modernization as well as new construction. We did 2 performing arts center as part of the signature projects for high school, one at El Camino and then the other at Rio Americano. Bella Vista signature project of the science building for new classrooms. And as well as Dyer Kelly in the top right, new elementary school, one of our first 2 stories for the district, and new elementaries in the district in the past 20 years. Continuing on that theme, Guerrero Elementary School was also another new construction modernization. We use the term modernization loosely. The only parts that we left of the original building was the concrete slab and a couple of columns. The rest of the structure and shell was all new. Next to that was another signature project, Mariloma High School Science Lab. This was a new 2-story classroom building that provided, I believe, 10 science labs with a flex room as well as 2 outdoor facilitating areas for classroom. Then we also had another signature project at CASA. This was the new Student Union Administrative Center. As part of this, we also did a CTE Score Academy for their medical program there, doing a modernization update at that facility. Next to that is Del Paso Manor Elementary School. This was a full campus redo. We demolitioned the entire site, built all new structures there for that site. Once again, we have Del Campo High School Science Building. This was a signature project for Del Campo. It also included a CTE modernization at that campus. The new science building itself is a 2-story similar to Mariloma. Houses 8 science classrooms, as well as a media arts media center library for that building. The CTE portion of it revamped one of their existing buildings and really helped flourish the fire academy, broadcast studio, fab lab, and a computer lab as well for that campus. And then on the right is Arden Middle School. This was a similar reuse from the Dyer Kelly model, but we converted to a middle school facility, 2-story for that site, completely reused. We kept the existing multipurpose room since that was newer. I believe in 2017 that was erected. We also did 2 of our charter schools, 2 of our sites that house our charter school partners. Little John site as well as the Winterstein. These were kind of a medium mod, new HVAC, carpet paint throughout the campus, new courtyards, really help some of our aging facilities that the district currently owns but are used by another entity, tapping in some of that state matching fund for charter schools to help us with these projects. Barrett Middle School. This is a new construction modernization that is just finishing up. What we did at this campus was we demoed one of the center classroom wings, opening up to a full campus courtyard, as well as a new gymnasium that's 20,000 square feet and a new science building that houses 6 labs. The rest of the campus received full modernization, new casework, carpet, lighting, windows, converted the old multipurpose room into a refreshed multipurpose room, but more of a cafeteria, but does act as a rainy day secondary place for PE and other activities in that campus. Current projects that are going on right now is Earl Leggett Elementary School. This is similar to Barrett. We're doing 2 new buildings on the campus as well as a full modernization of the existing. The 2 new buildings are a new multipurpose room for that campus, as well as a new classroom wing that has 6 classrooms. 4 of them are kindergarten as well as transitional kindergarten, and 2 standard classrooms for that wing. As well as that campus will be getting all new courtyards. A little bit of modification to the drop-off pickup. If anyone's familiar with that site, it is a very small parking lot, tight site. We couldn't work too much in with that parameters. We just added an extra drop-off lane to help alleviate some of the drop-off congestion. One of our other signature projects, Mesa Verde High School. This is another signature project, which kind of finished up our track and field theme throughout the bond. This is a full redo of their entire sports facilities at that campus, new synthetic football field, track, stadium, press box, lighting, as well as new tennis courts and new parking lot and drop off and basketball courts for that campus. So this was a large undertaking that expanded beyond the typical track and field upgrade that some of the other high schools got, but turned it into the signature project of going and really giving them a full facility at that campus, which was very needed if anyone's familiar with that high school. Rio Americano, we're continuing our trend with our CTE programs. At this facility, it's a modernization of their existing CTE building, redoing their wood shop, mechanical, metal shop, robotics, as well as expanding their medical lab at that campus. I didn't update the pictures on here because we do have a ribbon cutting coming up February 7th at 3:45, I believe. So I didn't want to show any of the good stuff in case you guys want to join us for that ribbon cutting.
No spoilers.
Very good, very good.
Teasing it.
Star King K8, we did 2 new classroom buildings there. There are 2 small, 2 classroom buildings to further support their kindergarten and TK programs at that site, as well as a new kindergarten TK play area and light modernization of 2 existing classrooms there to help alleviate some of the kindergarten expansion that they needed at that site. Another project that we've been doing is adding charging stations for our electric bus fleet at the courtyard. I believe we have 10 buses coming in. So we're making proper arrangements to have chargers there. So this will help the fleet and help us get to the Clean Energy Act for this. You know, those were all the kind of the high notes of the pictures that we had. We do have a number of other projects that we've done throughout the summer. The last 2 years, we've done kind of what we call a light mod at Will Rogers, Howe, Lycan. This is where we come in, we do carpet, paint, new furniture. Usually we pick up facilities that in the assessments, they're not in dire need, but we can do something quick and easy and really refresh those areas and give them a good facelift for it. The last 2 years, it's turned out very well. Staff and site has really welcomed it. As well as we've refreshed the tennis courts at Casa and Mariloma and miscellaneous roof projects. And then we have our miscellaneous IT projects, wireless upgrades, UPSs throughout the district. Currently under construction as well is our Arcade Fundamental Middle School, which will be a re-scrape of the entire site, demo everything after the new buildings are completed for that site, as well as Catherine Johnson Middle School. Both of these sites have very similar buildings. They're going to be sister campuses, just the placement of the buildings will be different depending on the site for each one. But they'll both be brand new campuses, classroom buildings, 2 classroom buildings with common areas inside, science, library, STEM building, as well as a library and administration building, and a new multipurpose room that have outdoor covered seating as well for the multipurpose room. We also working on one of another 3rd charter school, the Coleman site, that's in production right now of design, as well as a small modernization at Marymount. And then we're currently still working on CTE for Encina that I didn't have on here, but also the relocation of the adult ed over to Encina after we've relocated them from the Creekside property. So that'll be going under construction, and that comprises of 10 portables and a bathroom portable admin area at Encina to help that program there. Another part of the task of the facilities is furniture replacement. This has been an item that has kind of started when COVID came about. We have a number of classrooms that had double desks, and when we had the separation of 6 feet, that left 1 student at a double desk, and it made it very difficult for us to house any students in certain classrooms. So we quickly purchased, I think, 6,000 single individual desks and started distributing them throughout the campus. We went ahead, took advantage of that, and started replacing teacher furniture, bookcases throughout and really start doing another refresh of a lot of our campuses. And Sri Chenoweth has been spearheading this. I want to say she's done probably 20 to 30 school sites that have gotten full refreshes of furniture, student desks, libraries, and teaching equipment. So I have a couple pictures in here. A lot of our aging schools had what we kind of call our sled desks, where the seats are attached to the desktop itself. Not very conducive to collaborative learning. You can't push the desks together. Bottom left is the single matching chairs and desks, as well as teacher furniture. Going through some of our cafeterias, and over the years, the lunch tables deteriorate, get replaced. It's hard to find matching finishes from the 1980s. So you see a hodgepodge throughout our campus. We went through and kind of uniformal throughout some of the sites to give them better looking cafeteria tables. And kind of the fun part of it is revamping these libraries. A lot of our libraries were dated, just standard old wooden bookshelves, broken down furniture and miscellaneous places. So we've got a chance to go through and make these fun collaborative areas with fun furniture for the kids to come in, be invited, reading areas, and just make it a more welcoming center for that. And last, we did a quick refresh of our human resource area of changing reception desks. We've done a couple of these small projects throughout the district office to help expanding departments and just refresh some of the areas that are kind of more the public enters and more of our staff visits. So with that, I'll leave it to questions.
Wonderful report. Thank you so much. Questions and comments from the board. Ms. Costa.
I actually wrote my comments down because I didn't want to leave anybody out, and yet I'm sure I will have when I finish. But I want to thank Mr. Camarda and his team and our construction partners to create the highest quality facilities for our students and staffs. The school teams and the parents and students, and I know several of us on this board sat in on those meetings, who shared their design dreams, and you listened so carefully to them and so respectfully, and really made a difference for people feeling like they were heard. The past boards, which actually even preceded my friend Mr. Hernandez and I, to boards that talked about a new San Juan modernized. Cabinet members and the current ones who have shepherded this dream to reality. And most of all, I want to thank our community who entrusted us with their votes to give us the bond dollars to make this a reality for our students. I have to say, when we first started talking about this, I didn't think it would be possible. I really wanted it to be true, and I didn't think it would happen. And you made it a reality for our kids and our staffs. And I am going to be forever grateful for all that's been accomplished, but I also am going to be one of those voters voting for future bonds because I know we have so much more to do. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, President Frank, and I forget your name. Nicholas, thank you so much for the presentation. I couldn't help but notice, I worked on the bond issue from about 2000 to 2015. And if you pardon the expression, we really felt like we were putting lipstick on a pig. And to see now, and it's kind of apropos that the update is from 2015 to 2021, it is amazing what you've accomplished in the past 6 years. And I want to get out and see some of these schools. I've seen a lot of them, but man, this is substantial. This is what I would have liked to see early on, is some of these newer buildings, it really was hard. And I know at first we had to get the air conditioning in and get some paint on these buildings, but to see this type of modernization is just fantastic. And thank you so much. And looking forward to getting the next 4 years, getting some things built.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Other comments, questions from Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you, President Crease. I'd be remiss if I didn't, being on the facility committee for many, many years. And I sat on the bond oversight committee before I was a member, as a board member. So I just want to give my colleagues just a brief history on how we've gotten to this point. All that you saw here today is a result of 3 bonds, or 4. I think it's 3, right, Frank?
S was already spent out.
Yeah, so 3 bonds, Three, and the last one was Measure J, which was a $700 million bond, which passed in our community with a percentage of over 70%, right, Frank? Oh, 70%, Frank. So, but and here's what you don't hear in the community is that the method in which we pay back our bonds. Many school districts, when they get a bond, they pay that bond off many years, 15 to 20 years. And think about all those community members that are paying those taxes for all those years. We have taken an aggressive approach to pay back these bonds as soon as possible. And we're averaging about 8 years. Putting you on the spot. Frank.
All the bonds, I'd like to, Mr. Kent Stevens, our prior
Yeah.
chief business officer or deputy superintendent, really structured our bonds. There's multiple levels of repayment schedules on each of the issuances. Some could be very short-term bonds, which could be 8 to 10 years, 15 years. And I think our maximum is about 20 years. The typical payback on typical bonds is about 25 to 30 years. So aggressively paying back some short-term bonds. So the average is about 20 years. So millions of dollars worth of savings.
Yeah. So,
with our
and as a
bond
result of
repayment
that,
strategy.
other districts throughout the state have noticed what San Juan is doing. Frank and I, two CSEA conferences ago, did a presentation, and pretty much what I'm just telling you right now, they want to know how'd you guys do this? How'd you do it at San Juan? Because it's not the norm. So I'm very, very proud of what we've done as a district, and you can see by this presentation what our bond dollars, and we promised our community what we do, and we're complying with what we promised. So I applaud Mr. Camarda, our finance department, the manner in which we've handled our bonds and how we continue to, and I too will be a voter to support future bonds because we have proven to the community what we have said we would do at San Juan, and I applaud everybody on that behalf. So thank you so much.
Ms. Kretschmann.
Very impressive work. Thank you so much for the report back. In our student-led interviews, I think it was at Del Campo, they did ask us if we would vote for another bond. And, naively, I said, no more taxes, like one of our presidents was. And you are beginning to change my mind. So I appreciate the report back. Thank you so much. And I also have one question because I'm a newbie. What is a Fab Lab? You said that there was one at Del Campo.
Fab Lab.
Since we're working in the confined spaces of the existing building, the Fab Lab is kind of a mix between wood shop and metal. It's a blend of multiple things that you can do within there.
For fabrication? Is that
Yeah.
what
For
it's
fabrication,
Ah,
yes.
got
So
it.
woodworking
I like the
fabrication.
name.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll expand just a tiny bit on that. Really what it does is it gives students the interest in multiple disciplines. It could be in carpentry, it could be in electrical, it could be in plumbing. So it introduces you to multiple trades. So then you can make you can make a decision on what trade that you're really interested in, take that to the next level to another career. So the Fab Lab just provides multiple opportunities. It's not just one single thing. It's not just a single metal shop or a wood shop. It's all things introduced into the world of construction.
Okay, now I have a follow-up question. Is Del Campo the only school that has something like that that's integrated all together?
To that level, yes, but if you at Rio High School, we're expanding a tiny bit of that. We're now doing manufacturing, welding. There is a little bit of a little bit of a metal shop component to it. So they're not quite the same, but there are some of the same elements of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Well, I've said it many times. I love it. It's just fabulous. All the renovations and upgrading that we're doing. And it goes back to the whole child issue. We want kids to have everything they need to really focus on their academics, and having modernized facilities to do that is great for the staff. It's great for the kids. And they're just wonderful facilities. I haven't been in every single new renovated building yet, but most. And I do have a list of at least 15 site visits I'll be doing in the next several months. So I look forward to hitting up the ones I haven't hit up yet. Please, Mr. Camarda.
If you allow me just to expand just a tiny bit, because there's a lot of stuff that is on here that you just will not see in this type of a presentation. There are multiple HVAC projects that have been completed in our gymnasium. That's been something that has not been done. Our schools have not all had HVAC systems in all of our high school gymnasiums. You'll see a lot of HVAC replacement projects. You'll see a lot of roofing projects. These are not the sexy projects, but they're needed. These are the maintenance type projects. These are our infrastructure type projects that are equally as important to keep our infrastructure up and running. So we don't highlight a lot of those, but you'll see a lot of playground replacements, tennis court replacements. You'll see swimming pool updates. These types of things are just as crucial as replacing full campuses or doing modernizations, or even investing into career technical education, which we've done quite a bit of investment into career technical education with the help of Mr. Brett Wolf. Mr. Wolf goes and Ms. Robin Caruso goes and they look for these career technical education grants. We've been awarded a few of those in the bond. We have been expanding on that and maximizing that funding to provide new career technical opportunities for all of our employees. So we're really proud of that. In the future, you're going to see an aviation pathway at Rio. You're also going to, at Mira Loma. You're going to see a medical facility upgrade there as well. We're continuing to invest in not only college readiness, but career readiness as well. So I wanted to highlight that. Some of those projects you just won't see because they're not as flashy as new buildings. So I just wanted to highlight that.
I really appreciate you bringing that up because it's true. It's not a building, but it's just as important on so many levels, especially, HVAC as Sacramento started 100-degree days. And it's a big deal, right? And safety, there's been a lot of safety upgrades, fencing, making sure the doors lock right without keys and all the things. You could say it way more articulately than I just did.
Yeah, and if these big storms are any indication of how our infrastructure could hold up, I think we held up very well. We did have some roof leaks and some storm drain problems. But if you're looking at over 5 million square feet of space and hundreds of acres of property, we fared pretty well. That's because of our focus of a deferred maintenance program and doing the types of things that keep your building envelopes like roofs and windows and doors and storm drain systems and all that infrastructure, electrical infrastructure up and running. So we can credit our maintenance department and also our bond department for focusing on those types of projects as well. I wanted to add that. And I thank you, President Creasy, for allowing me to elaborate a little bit more on
I
that.
appreciate your elaboration. And I just have one question or asking you to expand. I think I already know the answer, but I would like it from our new board members to hear and also have it on the record. Referring to slide 4, can you talk, it's the facilities process slide. Can you speak a bit about where the facilities committee, I know you know what I'm about to ask, where the facilities committee, where their role, what is their role in this, and also the community engagement piece, please?
As far as the update to a master plan or
Specifically referring to the facilities process. I guess that is specific to the master plan, but if you could just talk about how we engage the committee to do our work in facilities and how community outreach in general works as we're doing these upgrades.
So when the facilities committee basically gets updates, they're not planning projects for us, but we are providing updates to them. We do that with Catherine Johnson Middle School, Arcade Middle School, and other projects. Now they provide some input, but they're not deciding the types of projects or those types of things. So the facilities committee is not used in that fashion as far as like approving projects or anything like that. They do act as kind of an advisory role to us. As far as when the project is selected, there is engagement with staff and also with community about the project. And we call that staff engagement a programming effort, to where we go in and we talk to every single division within that school site. You're talking about the science teachers, you're talking about math, history, career tech, whatever that is, as far down as all of the site, security, safe schools, nutrition services, custodial, all of them are involved in the planning process. And we also share out to the community. Once those plans start to get finalized, then we go out to the community and we tell them this is what our buildings are going to look like, building placement, this is the type of programs, number of classrooms, those types of things are shared with the community. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And maybe I misunderstood, but I thought it was our process, like KJ is a great example that did go to the facilities committee and the facilities committee did approve that prep plan and is excited about that plan. So please correct me.
Yeah, that was part of a larger effort of the west, of deciding the west side. That was part of the demographic analysis. That part of this project was to share with that committee and help the board, advise the board on the options for the Katherine Johnson Middle School, for the separation of the 6-12 model from a 6-8 to from a 6-12 to a 6-8, 9-12 model. So they advised us on that process. So that's where the Katherine Johnson piece came in. All the other projects were not as deeply delved into with that committee. But it was important for the board to understand what the facilities committee's advice would be on the options that we presented to the board. We presented options for the Creekside location. We presented options for 2 schools on the Encina campus. So that's how that advisory committee was utilized during that part of the process. It has not been, excuse me.
As well as the bond.
As well as bond oversight. It was not used as a portion of selection or approval. It was more of an advisory on the board's endeavor on looking at Encina and making a change to the Encina model.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for the report.
Yep.
Appreciate all that you and your department does. It's a lot.
Thank you. That's yours.
All right, we are now at item J2, Government Affairs Update, Mr. Thigpen.
Good evening, President Creason, board members, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about some work we're starting to accelerate as we enter a big transition year. So obviously 2023 is a big transition year for San Juan Unified, both in our system, our governance team, our superintendent, and in our state capital. We're also seeing an extremely large transition where over a third of our legislators are new. We're dealing with wild economic swings, a transition in the economy, and the landscape with which we are navigating complex policy issues in education provide us opportunities to proactively share our story, accelerate work around analyzing the impacts of proposed policy and deepening relationships with decision makers, our lawmakers, our policymakers, agency staff, downtown and at the Capitol and at the local and federal level, allow us the opportunity to hopefully strengthen decision-making in the weeks and months and years ahead. So tonight is not an action item. You know, I prayed that I would not have clicker difficulty tonight.
Point it at the computer.
There we go. Thank you. Did I do that or did I get an assist, a mystery assist? So tonight's an informational item. You don't have an action before you to take. But tonight we're going to tee up what some of our goals for government affairs in San Juan Unified are. This is newer work for San Juan. It's lived in different pockets over the years, and we're really trying to build a coordinated strategy around it so that we can hopefully be helpful and be a helpful resource to our external decision makers. We'll talk a little bit about some of the major legislation that has a direct impact on our practices here at the district through the last legislative cycle. And then, of course, we'll take a look at issues on the horizon and some of the things that we're looking at, trying to analyze the impact around and help tell our story around. I think it's first helpful to take a step back and really try to draw that connection to everything that we do back to teaching and learning and the impact on students. So I think it's no secret that sometimes there's a perception that at the state level or the decision-making level, there's often a disconnect between the direct experience to what's happening in our classrooms and in our schools and the last time they've had that experience. Sometimes decision makers, lawmakers, the last time that they were present in a classroom or had a direct connection to it, they were probably a student in that classroom. And so we really value and appreciate the opportunity to draw those connections, to bridge that disconnect and help strengthen understanding of the potential impacts to what's actually happening to our staff, happening to our students, and happening to our families when we're implementing policy. So as we build out this work, we have two key buckets that we're really focused on trying to build strategies around and focus our work, particularly in our first year. It's building two-way feedback loops, helping those that represent us navigate our system. We're a large, complex system. We're the 10th largest district in the state. We represent an extremely diverse demographic across our district boundaries. And we really, it can be very difficult for external stakeholders to know, have a single point of contact, to know how to navigate our system, to learn about whether or not they're having a positive impact through the policies that they're proposing or implementing. So we do that by having a coordinated single point of entry and contact, building internal awareness through presentations like this and through other contacts with our leadership teams throughout the district, and really trying to help open up those channels of communication and be a regular, reliable, and proactive resource on a regular basis. So just a quick recap on how we started this legislative cycle. We saw historic investments in public education we had not seen in probably a generation. So with a 13.26% increase to base funding to our local control funding formula, that's a combined increase to base funding and the cost of living adjustment that we saw statutorily. We saw more ongoing funding than we've seen in recent memory. What that allowed us to do was keep up with inflationary pressures, much like the students and families that we serve, that are consumers and feeling that pressure at the grocery store and at the gas pump. We also, as a school district, are consumers and are feeling those costs rising as well. This allowed us to not only help mitigate those inflationary pressures, but also provide compensation packages for our employees that allowed us to continue to be a competitive destination district for educators and support staff, not only in the region, but across the state. We also are doing this at a time where school districts across the state, including ours, are declining enrollment districts. We saw incredible impacts to absence rates due to COVID-19, and that also has an impact on our bottom line. So we were thankful due to, again, proactive relationship building and speaking with a common voice and building those relationships and really leaning on them throughout this legislative cycle across the state, that we were able to get some relief that help mitigate that cliff and that fiscal cliff due to both declining enrollment and the variations in chronic absenteeism that we saw through COVID-19. We've seen absences rebound a little bit, but not necessarily fully to pre-pandemic levels. So that's still something that's very much on our radar and in our conversation right now with policymakers. And then, of course, we've seen also a shift to some major investments in one-time and short-term funding through a variety of block grants to help us continue to enhance and extend some of the supports we've put in place instructionally, social, emotionally, for our students through emergency relief packages like ESSER, like ELO, and through now the Learning Recovery Block Grant Program, which will have several years to spend and use to be able to enhance and extend out some of those strategies that we've had in our multi-year ESSER and ELO plans. I do want to call out a couple of things here, though, and I'm not by any means personally taking credit for it, but I want to give a shout out to our team to help illustrate where we already have some existing recognition of our local need here in San Juan Unified, and also have some existing relationships. So through the budget package that was negotiated by the governor's office and legislators and adopted last June in a budget trailer language, we were able to secure $1 million in one-time funds for facilities improvements at Camp Winters, which continues to be a jewel of our district and a unique opportunity we're able to provide regionally. And also another $1 million to supplement other funding sources to help get a new career technical education construction pathway launched at Encina High School. So again, just offering that as an illustration of where we have opportunity to accelerate the work, add value in future years, and help supplement both the conversation that is happening statewide and really articulating our needs locally. Let's recap a little bit. Some of the legislation we saw passed related to K-12 education that impacts us. Ironically, 105 K-12 education bills that were passed this year would be considered somewhat light on the policy side. We're seeing more and more of the policy actually baked into the budget process, and we're likely to continue to see that shift. I have to share with you, I was extremely tempted to create a 105 slide deck for you this evening, but I figured that probably would not pass muster. So instead, what we decided to do was narrow this down to some points of interest where the board has taken an active interest either through board presentations, board communications, updates from staff, things related to curriculum and instruction, graduation requirements, CTE, school safety, mental health, and some of those other items. So I'm going to give these a light touch, but just want to offer them for a few highlights. And some of these have not gotten the same level of publicity as maybe the funding and investments we've seen through the budget process. So first, AB 185, this was part of the budget trailer bill. The extension to the extension of the authorization to complete a CTE course in lieu of Oxford foreign language requirement. That is something that has been in place for the better part of the last decade. We're seeing another several year extension on that front. We also, through SB 532, we have had some throughout the state, some protections and rights for our foster youth and other marginalized communities who are part of transient populations and therefore have more barriers to graduation. There have been a number of rights that allow them to be exempted from local graduation requirements. This law expands them and actually requires us to consult with those families if we believe that they could complete their graduation requirements in a 5th year and have that conversation with them. I'll give the standard caveat for all of these new bills that we're highlighting tonight that took effect January 1st. Among these and those that we're not covering tonight, among the 105, we still have work to do to analyze and operationalize these. But want to go ahead and signal these to the system that these will have some direct impacts. And of course, we'll be working in the background and with all of our departments to make sure that they're operationalized. Speaking of career technical education, the California Partnership Academies program is an integral component to CTE education. That's where within our CTE programs, we have formal and we receive state funds to provide formal partnerships with private industry to help provide those hands-on learning and workforce opportunities for our students through the specific pathways that they're in. This new legislation would actually require the state superintendent of public instruction to, when receiving those applications from school districts like ours, prioritize the allocation of those funds based on the connection to, will we serve underrepresented groups? Will we prioritize marginalized groups? And will it also help target groups that are underrepresented in the fields that we're targeting in those pathways like STEM? Right now, we have 3 partnership academies in our district. At CASA with the Medical Academy, Mesa Verde with their Business Academy, and also at El Camino with our Engineering and Welding Academy. And we have a 4th in the works that's going to be launched in fall 23 at Del Campo for our residential construction. And then this is one, Senate Bill 955, our outgoing Senate Education Chair Connie Leyva ushered this in the spirit of civics education. Starting this year, students are now allowed 1 unexcused absence per school year to participate in a civic opportunity. That can be voting, that can be some other political expression as defined by legislation, of course, with advance notice. This is something that we'll be working with our school sites again on operationalizing and also communicating to our families so that they know how their students can take advantage of this. I think it's no secret to this group that San Juan Unified and every school district across the state is dealing with an educator workforce shortage issue across the board, not just directly in the classroom, but including support staff as well. We've been able to move the needle a little bit in San Juan Unified through a variety of tools and through strategic investments from the state. What you're seeing here tonight are some things that continue to help move the needle and nibble around the edges a little bit. But this is going to be a persistent issue that our policymakers are dealing with, particularly in a year where we have really no new funding for new programs and at a time where we need human capital and ongoing resources to help us recover from the pandemic, right? So the first couple of items here, I just offered to highlight, we have increased flexibilities to allow us to continue to help cover unfilled absences through the use of guest teachers and substitute teachers. We have some new flexibilities related to employment verification at our disposal for those that make a career out of being substitute teachers. We also have a new opportunity to waive the basic skills proficiency requirement for guest teachers. Previously is that you did not have to take the CBEST, but you had to have evidence of coursework in college. That's why I was able to substitute teach 4 days last year during the Omicron variant. Now they've taken that a step further and removed that requirement as well temporarily. These help. I would say that some of our local solutions that we've implemented, including increasing our substitute guest teacher rate, making them more competitive, working collaboratively with our bargaining units to help provide extra compensation to our own staff that are stepping in, including our classified staff, stepping into the classroom, instructional assistants that maybe are aspiring to become teachers and helping cover those vacancies. That's helped us maybe get out a little bit ahead this year than some of our surrounding districts on those persistent vacancies. And then one thing we're looking forward to learning more details about is a new state mandate that the CDE create a template exit survey for educators when they leave. That's one tool. It's not necessarily the most effective tool, but it is a tool that once created, if we chose to distribute it, would potentially give us more data at our fingertips on the what is forcing people or what's inspiring people to leave the workforce. On the mental health front, the student mental health front, we've got a little bit of time on this top one, AB 2072. We have until November. Well, I'm sorry, our county offices have until November 1st, 2024 to develop a plan and work with school districts on the rapid deployment of mental health professionals, both our own and those at other disposal during a natural disaster or some other traumatic event like a school shooting, God forbid. AB 58 on mental health also requires us by 2025 to review and update our suicide prevention training plans for our staff and also how we communicate that plan to our external stakeholders and our families. If you went to the district website today, you would probably see a news item related to informing families on state laws around the safe storage of firearms. We had families here last fall speaking and asking the board to adopt a resolution, which they did last October, putting together a plan on how we were going to communicate that. That's now codified in state law and something that will be ongoing in our family handbooks moving forward. And then, of course, we already have a district-wide COVID-19 testing plan because we were able to actually build out a grow your own testing plan throughout the district and have full service COVID testing at all of our sites and facilities, something that other districts were not able to build out at the same scale. We have a robust plan that we've shared publicly. We'll be able to meet the SLA, which is in effect until 2026, I believe. In addition to, obviously, right now we have our COVID dashboard as well. So it probably feels a little bit like whiplash. I think in California, we're used to wild swings in the economy, given our revenue structure and our tax structure here in California. But just as quickly as we were celebrating historic investments in public education, we're now also looking at a potential recession on the horizon in a very conservative state budget. I would say on the whole, probably about the best case scenario for a starting point for negotiations on the budget for education that you could hope for, and probably what our folks who are more experienced in working in the space, they've seen far worse at initial proposals and outcomes when we're looking at downturn years. We're looking at a $22 billion statewide deficit. Thanks to the Prop 98 guarantee that helps insulate us to some degree. And in the governor's first proposal, which will of course be revised in May as lawmakers negotiate and adopted in June, would largely avoid cuts to some of the biggest, to our baseline programs and some of the more ambitious policy investments that this administration, the legislature has made, like in transitional kindergarten expansion, universal meals, some of those other investments in the educator workforce, like teacher residencies, which have allowed us to start recruiting and growing our own teacher residency program in the coming years. We are seeing a very high proposed statutory COLA of 8.13%. Again, like our families, we are dealing with the impacts of inflation. That's starting to cool just a little bit. So we'll see when statutory COLA is written in April, what the actual number looks like. Of course, it's extremely early right now, so we don't know the immediate impacts to our actual budget projections. That will be provided probably at one of our mid-year updates by Ms. Stahlheber. But we do know that this could potentially, if this number holds through the summer and through adopted budget, it does trigger contingency language in our bargaining unit contracts to at least come back to the table and have conversations around what that might mean for us. I want to talk a little bit about just what the governor is proposing to help make this pencil out. And we are going to continue to have questions about this in public education. We're looking forward to the details through trailer bill language coming out in the next couple of weeks. And so we'll learn quite a bit more then. But the first piece is they're delaying some one-time spending or making some cuts to some one-time spending. And the area that has received the most attention is in the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant. So that was one large bucket of money that the legislature gave school districts several years to spend, and we have wide discretion on how to use it. We received our first installment in San Juan Unified of about 11.3 last December. And based on the governor's budget proposal, not sure that we're going to be seeing that second installment in the spring. What the legislature did is they packaged a lot of different interests within that block grant money, not just for arts, music, and instructional materials, but also for operational costs, recruitment and retention, learning recovery, and other needs as we assessed at the local level. And that's something that we're still putting a plan together and looking at how it fits into our overall picture. The justification that the governor's office is using in making that proposed cut is that through Prop 28, there will be a new ongoing revenue stream for arts and music programs in schools. Now, of course, the difference there is that that ongoing funding stream does not carry the same level of discretion. It's actually far more restricted than what we saw in the block grant money. So a lot of questions on that front, still evaluating the potential impact. And of course, it's very early right now. The other item that you may have heard just a little bit about is a new high profile proposal by the governor on what's being called an equity multiplier. So it's the 10th anniversary of the local control funding formula, which provides a district method for appropriating a weighted student formula, basically weighting funding toward our highest need students based on our district-wide averages. This is one of the first proposals that we've seen from this administration to add a piece to that would be a school site-based allocation based on free meal participation at schools. It's not a lot of money that's being proposed right now, about $300 million. One of our education consultants estimates that roughly 600 plus or minus schools across the state, based on what the criteria would be, would actually be eligible for those funds. We think in our district, it would be a very small handful, but we're going to wait and see what the details and trailer bill language are. But the governor is trying to follow up and follow through on a promise he made to equity advocates and other lawmakers to better target some of those funds to some of the students that we see consistently underperforming on our dashboard and have historic access and opportunity gaps in public schools, including African-American students. So we're very eager to see what this might look like and looking forward to more details. But I think the short story is there's no shortage of issues in public education on the horizon right now. Again, we experienced a generational disruption to learning into public schools that is going to require a massive amount of human capital, a lot of time, and ongoing resources to help us continue to cover beyond emergency resources. And again, right now, because of the swings in the economy, it's unclear what those ongoing resources might look like. But we are grateful that for some of those whole child investments, like transitional kindergarten, universal meals, community schools, that right now the proposal is not to touch those because we want to make sure that those learning recovery investments are sustainable. We still have chronic staff and student mental health issues that we're just now beginning to continue to unpack and really learn the root causes of those. And of course, we talked a little bit about trying to develop that educator pipeline and bring more people into the profession at a time where we have historic shortages. We have about 30% of our lawmakers at the Capitol that are new this year, and about 2/3 of San Juan Unified's representation, at least at the state Capitol, is new. So carrying over from last year was reelected Kevin McCarty. He represents a sliver of Arden Arcade and Carmichael in our district, and he also, his committee and staff, it's the Budget Subcommittee on Education, carries a lot of influence in those budget conversations related to education. We have 2 new members in the neighboring Assembly District 7. We have Josh Hoover, who I got to know through our mutual time at the Folsom Cordova Unified School District. And then, of course, Senator Nilo is our new state Senate representative representing all of our schools in District 6. So our next steps, I want to circle back to what our core goals are related to feedback loops and relationships. So we're going to spend time helping tell our story, helping follow the conversation and analyze potential impacts, and really build relationships not only with our local delegation, but with their staff, who often have more institutional knowledge and historical experience over time, even when we have transition in legislators. Some of them are parents or former parents in our schools or graduates of our schools. Again, we are a known entity and a regional presence here in the state, and we want to leverage the existing relationships we had and add value to them. So we'll probably be organizing more visits to schools, providing more regular updates, and just being a resource and somebody that people can call on a regular basis to help understand what might the impacts of this proposed policy be, or is what we did last year working, or where could we potentially provide some tweaks? So we look forward to helping carry that conversation forward. With that, happy to answer any questions or take any comments this evening.
Thank you for that very thorough report. Any comments, questions from my colleagues? Mr. Avey.
Just have 2 quick questions. Do we have a registered lobbyist that we contract with, or do we have, or is it just you as our government affairs point person? How's that work?
So we have contracts with consultants. They're not for direct lobbying, but we do receive their reports and analysis on bill tracking. So School Services of California, Capital Advisors are 2 of those. And as I'm stepping into my role right now is to focus less on direct lobbying and more on being a liaison. So as we build out that work, we'll continue to evolve and assess need.
And then just a second question. I think I've heard in the past that the board has not taken positions on legislation. Is that accurate or not accurate? Okay.
Accurate.
So that's just kind of a general norm for the board. Okay, thank you.
Any other, Mr. Miller?
Well, with that question, it just occurred to me that that may be something we want to do, at least in support of a bill, you know, if it's needed, or non-support of a bill, saying these are, you know, you have some unintended impact to us. Here's why we don't support it. And so I think that's a good idea, if need be, if a letter needs to be written. But the one thing I wanted to comment on, because I know the state's our major benefactor. I mean, we operate under the state, but what about the relationship with the federal government? And also I was thinking of our, you know, the local colleges, both junior and Sac State and Davis. We heard about updates on medical programs at say Mira Loma, and are we tying that in with the UC Med Center, or are we finding opportunities there with our government affairs?
No shortage of opportunities to make connections. You know, we're trying to, I'll give you an example, you know, at the local level, we're using their transition in leadership, our new superintendent, to reset and foster relationships where we have the opportunity to do that. And then, of course, at the federal level, there's work to do. That's certainly, you know, on our radar. where the federal government's influence versus where the states is and having a direct impact. We're just going to assess that need on a case-by-case basis. We're of course happy to see that there have been some improvements at the federal level and what we might see related to special education funding and their portion of it. That was one big key piece from what we saw in the transition of from the previous Congress heading in. So there is a lot of opportunity there. I think, I want to give some credit to different pockets of our system where we already have some of those relationships with our community colleges. We had someone mention dual enrollment this evening. So, we have strong partnerships right now, both through our Division of Teaching and Learning, our Family and Community Engagement division, in building those relationships with other external partners and helping identify and connect resources to our programs. And helping direct students to their pathways. So if there's an opportunity for us to play a role on the policy side and help strengthen that in some way, we'll of course have those conversations.
That's very strategic. And one thing I found, if you're having trouble getting a hold of somebody that any of us elected, it's very helpful to grab us and get you through that door if you need it. Both at the state and federal level. I found that to be true with my city career. Get an audience, more than just a letter. If you want an audience, a lot of times bring one of us along and that'll help. And I'm more than glad to help you.
Thank you.
Ms. Vasquez.
I want to thank you for the report, and I'm excited for sort of the role in the space that you're looking to take up, given our geographical proximity to the Capitol. I think this is definitely a place where we have many opportunities to lead. And I know I'm not the only person on this dais, but that has spent time around downtown, but having spent most of my career in and around the Capitol, I'm excited to sort of start by telling the story, but also branching out and hopefully working alongside our regional partner school districts as well. Because I think, particularly during COVID, it was an example of both the strengths of moving as a region on some things, but also some of the challenges that are presented in moving as a region. So I'm just in general excited about the partnerships that you're looking to build. I also just appreciate the legislative update. I think for the most part, our previous legislation updates have been limited to impacts of the budget, appropriately so, but there's a lot that happens in the policy space that needs to be implemented that frankly is a lot of work. And so it's really helpful to know, and I appreciate you taking that on. And I also just want to say thank you for highlighting sort of the one-time investments, particularly at Camp Winters and the CTE investments. This is actually, I think, the first time I've seen it on an agenda packet. I knew about it because it's a professional hazard that I have to read through the budget. So I knew it was there. But I do want to just take the opportunity to publicly thank our legislative delegation that helped get that through, including former Senator Pan, former Assemblymember Ken Cooley, and current Assemblymember Kevin McCarty as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to go ahead and give credit to Ms. Vasquez, who honestly, it wouldn't have happened if she didn't make the ask. So thank you for doing that. You definitely deserve some credit in there. Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you so much for the report. So helpful. We are now at item J3, conveyance of permanent easement at John Barrett Middle School to the County of Sacramento. Mr. Camarda.
Yes, and thank you, President Crease, and again, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli and Ms. Cunningham. Tonight's facilities item is an action item. It is the calling of a public hearing to convey an easement again at John Barrett Middle School. The action requested is that the superintendent is recommended that the board call a public hearing in order to solicit public comment and adopt resolution number 4058, declaring the conveyance of a permanent easement at John Barrett Middle School to the County of Sacramento.
I declare the topic of conveying a permanent easement at John Barrett Middle School to the County of Sacramento, a public hearing, and it is now open for public comment. Is there public comment? There being no comments, I declare the public hearing closed. Do any board members have questions or comments? Seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 4058? Moved by Ms. Viescaz, second,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Krivchek. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are at item K, board reports. Any board reports this evening? Ms. Viescaz.
I want to thank my colleagues and also the broader community for giving a very warm welcome to a new member of the San Juan Unified Class of 2041. I've done the math, yes. I missed our first meeting of the year due to the birth of my child, which is just such a weird thing to say. Lucia Elena Marley, and I really wanted to just take the opportunity to report that out. That's why I was not here. But also just say thank you to the broader extended San Juan community for the support of text, emails, and otherwise words of encouragement as we get used to having a new member of the family around. If I'm a little bit distracted or if you want to see baby photos, by all means, I have plenty and I'm happy to share. And if I look a little sleep deprived, that is why. But a sincere thank you to everybody. It's been a wonderful couple of weeks. She was born January 1st. At 6 a.m. She didn't want to miss the party that will be 2023. So we're very excited about that. And thank you all very much. I really appreciate all of the messages, notes of congratulations, etc.
So happy for you, Ms. Viescaz. Welcome back to the dais and congratulations on the new addition. She's absolutely adorable and perfect in every way. I'm so happy for you. And I think you have quite a few people in the room and beyond that are here for you, whatever you need to get through the next 18 years. Okay. It gets weird around 16. Okay.
Yeah. Start falling apart.
Any other board reports? Mr. Avey.
Thank you very much. So about 2 weeks ago now, on I think was probably the last super rainy day of the storm, we actually had a really good meeting with parents and teachers and students out at Orangevale Open. I think the board and many of the cabinet members got a whole slew of emails from the community that were concerned about some trees that were scheduled to be cut down on campus due to creating a tripping hazard. I was really happy to see that district staff, when they started getting that feedback, they hit pause on the process. They convened a community meeting on the campus. We had about 10 parents show up, about 10 students show up. The parents were bundled up because they actually thought the meeting was going to be out in the storm, but they were actually ready to weather it because they wanted to have the conversation. I thought it was notable that the first thing that I think it was the president of the PTO said was, "We're very reasonable people. We just want to talk to you about what's going on." And through that conversation, I think we were able to come up with some really good solutions that address the district's issues with the sick trees. And they also looked at some interim measures to address the parents' concerns, which was primarily shade for PE classes, things like that. So I just think it was just a really good example of what we can do when we work with our local sites on those issues. And just address them head on and have a conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you to district staff. I think it also was probably a rather busy time, but they showed up with facilities, with the arborists, with all of those folks, the folks who had really been working double, triple overtime, but they showed up to have that conversation. So I'm grateful. And I think the parents and students at Orangevale Open will be grateful as well. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Ms. Krivchek.
I met with Mr. Ternatori, the Director of Continuous Improvement and LCAP. We have not had a meeting since the committee went to quarterly meetings instead of monthly, but I did want to let the board know, particularly the new members who are going to nominate someone for the LCAP PAC, that although it is scheduled for the fall, there is an opportunity before the March board or the March LCAP PAC meeting that if you submit your nominations, they could hold a new member orientation for those members if we're so interested. And I thought that it was really interesting to learn that they're kind of approaching the end of their listening session and have already engaged over 1,800 participants. I thought that was incredible and they still have more to go. So I can't wait to hear more at the report back at our board meeting, I think in February, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you have nominations, submit them.
Thank you, Ms. Krivchek. Any other board reports? Just very, very quickly, it's been a busy couple of weeks since our last meeting, so I'm only going to uplift 2 items. I was able to visit the Encina campus. Great visit as always. And I was able to visit for the first time their Future Teachers Club. It's a lunchtime club led by one of their wonderful teachers. I had an opportunity to speak to the students, which I wasn't prepared for, but they wanted to know who I was and where I came from. So it got real quick because those kids will ask you the hard hitting questions and I gave it to them and it was really great. It was a wonderful experience. And I'm so inspired when we go into Encina. You know, we talk about ensuring that our workforce is representing the community it serves. So what better place to start a Future Teachers Club than Encina, right? So we really do have that reflection. So it really warmed my heart and I hope that that program will grow. I also visited Greer. I've been on the Greer campus a couple of times, but this is the first time I did an in-depth visit. First of all, it's one of our renovated campuses. It's absolutely gorgeous, great furniture, all the things, right? But they have some really neat programming, a new principal over there that's excited to do the job. I mean, she'll get out there and she's like running footballs with the kids. I'm like, she is doing the thing. I mean, I'm like, I'm too old to even think about all that, but I'll distribute water. They have a wonderful gardening program. They're going to be bringing in chickens. The kids are going to incubate eggs and track their growth. I mean, it's really next level learning in a way. I mean, think about learning math and measurements and in that kind of hands-on way and growing your empathy because you're a little baby chick. I'm trying to talk him into letting me have it, but I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to keep pushing. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. If folks haven't been to Greer yet, it's definitely worth the visit. Okay. I think no other board reports. All right, we are at item L, future agenda items. Do any board members wish to add any future items? Mr. Avey.
So thank you. At our last meeting, we got a good update from Mr. Allen on some of the facilities update and the safe schools work that we were doing. And I'd commented that at some schools, I'd noticed that we've secured the campus so well that there was no access to the public facilities on that campus, playgrounds, basketball courts, sports fields during non-school hours. Since that meeting, I've actually had 2 separate parents come to me and talk to me about the fact that they can't access like the Bella Vista track. And I've heard the same thing with the Del Campo track. And it just spurred to me the conversation as somebody who grew up. Everybody went and ran around the Del Campo track, right? It was a community place. I just was wondering if there would be space for this board to get an update on what is our policy and or approach to public use of campus spaces during off hours. Possibly a review of, you know, what is our policy around people that rent it, you know, the formal use of it, but then also just what is our approach to what spaces on our campuses do we want open? I think I would be very interested in just understanding what that is across the district, as I do here of just kind of ones and twos of, you know, is that just the school locking a gate or is that just how we approach keeping our facilities undamaged, right? So that would just be my idea for a future board agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Avey. I think being liaison over facilities, they are addressing this, we're gonna have a board report on the facility handbook in February. Isn't that correct, Frank? And that may be a good time to address some of your things that's coming in February.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any other board reports? Or no, sorry, future agenda items. I was at jury duty really early and that's what I blame for this brain starting to fail. I apologize. I think we're done with future agenda items. All right. We do not need to return to closed session. We are adjourned.